Thank you to our sign language students tonight. I'd like to approve the minutes, January 23rd, 2025. Are there any amendments or questions?
I just want to say this was a very tricky one. Betty, amazing. Amazing how you captured very difficult, complicated conversations, as always. Very well.
Betty's the best. Hearing none, I'll accept the minutes as is. Now on to action 4, the approval of the treasurer's report for December 2024. Is there a motion? Okay, I heard a second. Questions, comments? All in favor? Dave, yeah. Okay, thank you. I should mention we're down 2 trustees today. So that's why we're a little light up here at the table. Action 5, the approval of budget transfers. Is there a motion? Okay, second. Everyone's a little slow tonight. All right. Questions, comments? All right, all in favor? Thank you. Now we're going to have the report from the SGO. Hello, how are you?
I'm good. Good evening, everyone.
Miss Caitlin Ho.
Yeah, no problem. First, the Asian Student Alliance would like to formally extend a thank you to all of the Board of Education members and everyone who attended the second annual Lunar New Year celebration. The board has really helped to create an environment where culture and community can thrive, and that really helped in making the event a great success. We were honored to bring together an estimated 700 people from our district in the celebration, approximately double compared to last year. And we just wanted to say a special thank you to Mr. Contreras, our high school principal, Miss Aguiar, the World Language Department Director, our 6 Mandarin teachers, Miss Lee, Miss Tracy Tsai, Miss Jingwen Tsai, Miss Yang, Miss Huang, and Mr. Schultz, as well as the teachers and staff who helped before or during the event, Miss Lamar, Mr. Catalano, Miss Maldonado, Miss Haleko, Miss Garone, Miss Hall, Mrs. Johnson, and all of the custodians, as well as the volunteer parents and students from the ASA, Mandarin Club, and the World Honors Language Society. And a special shout out to the 2 local businesses, Zoji Dumpling House and At Boba, for their generous support. So thank you all for making this event so memorable. Next, in terms of athletics, some updates are the Todd Heimer Memorial Gymnastics Tournament will be hosted at North Shore High School on Saturday, February 8th, in honor of the former student athlete Todd Heimer, as well as the girls' winter track team made it to the conference and their county champions, and they will be competing in the New York State qualifier next week. Lucas Costello also earned all county honors in pole vault and is preparing for the state qualifier. Additionally, the varsity girls bowling team qualified for the Nassau County Small Schools Championship for the first time in 20 years, placing 3rd overall. Mateo Ricon and Tallulah Weiss will be competing February 11th at the Garden City Bowl to represent our region in New York State bowling. And if they win, they will go to Syracuse representing the Long Island region. Additionally, in terms of areas for improvement at the high school, there have been over 20 concerns and reports about the science research room and how it is overcrowded and potentially unsafe due to the number of students working on experiments and the fact that the room is not conducive for proper experimentation, as well as a sink should be inside of the room just in case of chemicals and just improve safety overall. Additionally, the schoolhouse, there have been concerns about how the heating system may need to be updated because sometimes the classroom, specifically the schoolhouse, is too cold. So I'm going to be working with Mr. Contreras on that. So yeah, that's my report for today.
Thank you, Caitlin. Dr. Z?
Thank you, Caitlin, and I'll just pick up on the science research room. So over the summer with Mr. Menchel, who's here this evening, Mr. Contreras, Mr. Hall, Mr. Pappas, Dr. Smythe, and myself, we picked a new location. So we've been working with our architect to get that new location ready. It does take a little time, so we'll continue to update you and student body, especially our science research students and Dr. Mordecai, on the progress of that. So we think it will be a much better space. And I also want to give you a shout out for your leadership, Caitlin, of the Asian Student Alliance, starting the Asian Student Alliance 2 years ago and bringing this amazing event to us, second year in a row. I did have a sense that it broke some attendance records here in North Shore. It was so well attended. Several of us were there. To see our faculty and our students engage local businesses. I had some conversations with the help of some of our teachers translating. It was amazing. So a job well done. I hope you're proud of what you've done to bring an event to North Shore that we're all very proud of. So thank you so much. Just a couple other announcements from my end. We had our first capital projects discussion meeting this week virtually. We're going to have our next in person next Wednesday. It was a great meeting. It helped us to organize our thinking, and we hope to continue that progress next Wednesday. And soon thereafter, get some more concrete, no pun intended, plans to our board for how we want to proceed with a much smaller capital plan than the one we just finished, but one that's very important nonetheless. I wanted to mention that it is a public matter now that when it comes to the Propel issue, the proposed power line project that's going to possibly run through Nassau County, North Shore Schools has accomplished party status, so we'll be involved in the permitting process, asking questions that pertain to the safety of our students, the transportation depot, its impact on that, and any educational implications for the construction that might happen there. So I want to thank the board for their support of that, and we'll be a part of that process. Students and faculty and the whole community has likely heard about the possibility of immigration enforcement coming into zones that were previously protected, namely schools, houses of worship, and hospitals. And I just want to assure the board and the community that the internal team, the administrators, have plans in place to handle this that protects our student rights, that protects our information of students, and that abides by New York State guidelines as well. And we'll be continue communicating with our faculty. And certainly if any parents have questions about that, they can contact me directly, and I'd be happy to share. A couple of other announcements. It's been a really amazing week here at North Shore. So we had our Lunar New Year celebration. Yesterday, Mr. Catalano and our music team from across the district sponsored the district-wide choral festival. This is something we used to do years ago, and Mr. Catalano has really led its return. Yesterday, February 5th, the North Shore High School Concert Chorale welcomed the middle school and fifth grade singers to the high school theater for a day of music making and community building. Mr. Catalano, the maestro, and the music team led the group through rehearsals to perform Rollo Dilworth's wonderful piece, Everlasting Melody, at the end of the day. It was a crowd of 300 Viking singers, ages 10 to 18, who came together. So thank you, Mr. Catalano. Thank you all of our choral teachers at the elementary and middle level and our whole music department. Were you in that, Caitlin?
No, unfortunately, I'm not part of chorus, though I wish I was.
I thought you were, because you had such an amazing performance at the end of the celebration.
Oh, thank you.
Tuesday,
I'm just a passionate theater kid.
So I think you're walk-in ready if Mr. Catalano needs some more help. Just a couple more announcements. We have a Parent University on Tuesday evening. It's virtual. Mr. Marino sent out a link. It's part of our special education Parent University series on the middle school to high school transition process. I'll do my usual Dr. Z email and text blast of that as we get closer. And finally, next Thursday, we'll have our first What Makes Us Us virtual meeting, and you'll get that link from me as well. Focused on middle school, we'll be talking about with middle school families and faculty, what we value at the middle school level, how that should inform our budget decisions, and we'll also talk a little bit about the North Shore journey this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Z. We have some special student recognition.
We do, and we're very excited. We have a lot of students here this evening, so I'm going to go up to the podium. I'm going to ask you, Dr. McCary and Dr. Smythe, to come up with me.
And all the parents who are here, please feel free to get up, take pictures, move around. Don't be bashful.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to ask Dr. Mordecai And Mr. Menchel to please come up. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your dedication, and congratulations to you as well as Mr. Menchel. And we want to, of course, congratulate Ms. Caitlin Ho and Mr. Eli Wesley Jones, who were recently named among the top 300 scholars in the 2025 Regeneron Talent Search. It is the nation's oldest and most prestigious science and math competition for high school seniors. The 300 scholars will be awarded $2,000 each, and their schools will be awarded $2,000 for each enrolled scholar. Scholars were selected from nearly 2,500 entrants from 795 high schools across 48 states, American Samoa, Guam, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and 14 other countries. So we're going to ask Ms. Caitlin Ho to come up and talk about your project. Both of these projects are truly amazing. Caitlin's science research project is titled Magnesium Magic, the rescue of Parkinson's model of Drosophila melanogaster with MgCl2 supplementation. She studied how long-term magnesium chloride dietary supplementation affects a fruit fly model of Parkinson's disease. Caitlin found that adding magnesium chloride to the Parkinson's and control flies diet helped the flies live longer and made them healthier neurologically. Her research shows that magnesium chloride can be used to slow neuronal degeneration, increase survival, and improve neurological health. Her research also suggests that magnesium chloride supplementation may prevent or delay brain aging and Parkinson's disease onset. How amazing. Congratulations, Caitlin, on your recognition. And we're going to ask Eli Wesley Jones to please come up as well. Thank you for being here. Eli's project, The Misunderstood Math of Medical Tests, Improving Understanding of Conditional Probability in Screening Tests. He explored how the phrasing of medical risk information influences the ability of patients to understand that information. More specifically, Eli studied if the use of diagrams and videos to present confusing screening test results would enable patients to better understand positive screening test results. He found that the use of diagrams and videos is significantly more effective at conveying the results of screening tests than words alone. Congratulations, Eli. And I'm going to quote Dr. Mordecai, even though she's right behind me. Eli and Caitlin have been standout researchers in her program since their freshman year. Being named top 300 scholars in the Regeneron Science Talent Search is a testament to their dedication and passion for scientific discovery. All of her seniors have invested countless hours into their research, achieving remarkable success, and she couldn't be more proud of the program as a whole. Congratulations again. We're going to do a little photo now. Okay, Mr. Seth Gordon, our Director of Social Studies and Business, is here. We're going to ask him to come up. And I think we're going to ask our students our virtual enterprise competition students to come up and talk about their projects. So I'm going to just read a little bit of an introduction here as you guys come up. In their first year of running a virtual enterprise class, North Shore students won gold and silver awards at the VE Trade Show and Business Plan competition hosted by Long Island University. Their firm, named Vital Bright, a wellness gum company focused on delivering active ingredients to reduce stress, anxiety, and build immunity, garnered 3 awards: a gold award for best booth design, a gold award for best sales material competition, and a silver award for best sales pitch competition. So we're going to invite you guys up to talk a little bit about your work. Lauren Sandbeck, is she here too? Ms. Sandbeck, thank you for being here. We're going to just bring the screen up. I'm sorry about that. And then, yeah, exactly. And then we're going to recognize each individual student after the presentation.
So we also did want to point out too for our board and our community that's here, they did set up their award-winning booth here as well. They took the time after school to set it up, so feel free to check that out as well. And I'm going to hand over the presentation to our COO and CEO suite. Thank you guys so much.
So our class is Virtual Enterprise. So what Virtual Enterprise is pretty much it's a stimulated business that we collectively as a class come up with a business plan and we pitch it across, we pitch it to our fellow classmates to then make sure we all agree on a business plan idea to then compete against a bunch of thousands of schools on Long Island to compete in a competition. Some course activities include building a resume. So in the beginning of the year, we'll build a resume to kind of apply for a job within the business. We also do department meetings, weekly agendas and minutes, and we also have checking accounts, savings, and taxes. So we pretty much operate as almost if we were a real business, however we are a virtual business. Some key projects and activities that we've done so far is an elevator pitch, a business plan, a branding guide, an employee manual.
First, there are trade shows included. This is where most of our selling is done and where we gain the most revenue. We have visited the LIU Trade Convention, which took place in January, and we are planning on attending the Javits Center Trade Show, which is happening a little bit later in the springtime. So just some brief background on the trade show. 5,000 participants. 5,000 participants from the U.S. and 9 to 14 countries attend, as well as representing 200 plus companies. So it's definitely a really great depot to network with other companies and do our selling. Here you'll find photos of us. That's our C-suite. So that's our COO, CEO, and CFO, as well as our live booth at the trade show, which we did win gold for. And that's just a photo of our entire Vital Bite team holding our awards with pride. In addition, these are the 3 trade show awards that we had won in more detail. We're very proud to say that we won these awards, and our whole team collectively put a lot of time and and effort into getting these awards as a team.
But when we were coming up about to build our business, we wanted to create an idea that it was something that was in need from our students. So we decided to create a Google form to then send out to fellow North Shore students to see what they were in need of. And we found out that it had a lot to do that they were very overwhelmed with school, stress, and wanted to like boost their immunity. So we did a little market research with that, and we found out this is how we then led us to create our company.
For the past 5 months, my colleagues and I have been working to create VitalBite. VitalBite is a health-oriented gum company that offers a unique line of chewing gums specifically designed to address pressing challenges of anxiety, immune system, and focus. We have 3 distinct gum formulations. Each flavor is infused with essential vitamins that are designed to improve cognitive functions, increase immune resilience, and decrease stress. Um, a lot of teenagers and young adults facing everyday challenges, stress, unbalance, not healthy lifestyle, and we're offering a product to incorporate the vital vitamins students crave in 3 distinct flavors to help target common symptoms. We just want to make your life better and make you healthier.
So combining both that problem statement and our planned solution, our mission as a company is to help decrease stress levels, calm people down, and boost immunity when they are starting to feel the struggles of everyday life.
This is our marketing plan. We sell each pack of gum at $12.99, and it costs us $7 to make. So for our marketing plan, you can see on the top left corner, that's a photo of the back of our business card where it has our number, our website, our email, and as well as where we reside. Additionally, we market on our 3 most important platforms are TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. However, we get our most traction from Instagram. Here you can see on the bottom left that we do promotions on there. So here's our most recent one. This is our Valentine's Day promotion. We also do things as like Employee of the Month. Additionally, we have we're hitting 100 followers, and here we have companies from other schools across Long Island following us, as well as other North Shore students, which is also great to get some traction with the virtual enterprise class, so they could also be aware of what we're kind of selling. As well as all the way on the far right, that's a photo of our website that we will show at the end of the presentation.
So for time's sake, we did have to sort of condense all of our financials. However, here are some highlights that I thought were important to hint out tonight. So although it would be great if this was real money, it's actually not. It's fake money, of course, from the simulated course. However, during that trade show that I had mentioned previously, LIU, we generated a total revenue of $138,506. This significantly increased our revenue intake and also our net profit for the month of January, which definitely helped our company expand and helped us expand our inventory to do more selling. Here is just the 2 angel investors that we seeked to kind of help us with starting up our company, both in which we received $50,000 from, which we are extremely grateful for them just coming to support of our stimulated business, as well as help us get up and running and kind of get up to speed with all the other virtual enterprise companies who have kind of been in this game for a little bit of a longer time. Once again, here we just have our out-of-network business contract with North Shore Schools, so we would like to thank our schools for supporting us along the way so far, as well as a bank screenshot. This is just simply showing that we do have a healthy cash inflow and outflow, and shows that we have a balanced amount of spending as well as the income that we have being generated every month.
This is our organizational chart. So as I mentioned before, we did build resumes in the beginning of the year to then apply for a job. So our company consists of our C-suite, which is our COO, CFO, and CEO. And our COO looks over sales, marketing, and IT, whereas our CFO looks over HR and accounting. And our CEO kind of looks over everything. However, we're always ready to lend a helping hand to any department that needs a little more support during that time.
Yes, VitalBite is virtual, but we are actually learning real-life skills that we're going to use in our future. Virtual enterprises gives us the opportunity to use skills that we're going to use and apply, but otherwise it also develops an idea from students what career paths they want to choose. They develop their interests and they know what they want when they're coming into college, and maybe it will inspire them to create something on their own.
Thank you.
So right now, sorry, our CEO is going to show you our website. We're also going to be passing out some folders to our board just to show you a kind of marketing branding, as well as a little stress ball.
We want to thank you for being here this evening. You are truly trailblazers. The first team to do this for North Shore. So this is amazing. Thank you, Ms. Sandback. And we want to recognize each of you individually. And we're going to introduce you by your title in the organization. Gianna Stella, CEO. Paul Panagos, COO. Maria Michael, CFO. Polina Semenko, Sales Director. Juliana Gaeta, Marketing Director. And team members Brendan Freund, Madeline Frisella, Michael Gianola, Alexandra Papadopoulos, Alexander Silverstein, and Tallulah Weiss.
We're going to go back for the next part.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
No, no. No problem. Notes. Leave it. Yeah. I think you guys need a psychologist endorsing your product. It's just amazing. I think that is unbelievable. Yeah.
I could see them on Shark Tank any day now.
Yeah.
And I would really like to try some of that gum, so I hope it gets made.
All right, so we have our discussion tonight. Math and science at the secondary level, right, Dr. Z?
That's right. And I want to thank Dr. Kim Mattis, our Director of Mathematics, K through 12, and Mr. Stephen Minchell, our Director of Science, K through 12, who are here this evening with Dr. Smythe, who prepared this wonderful presentation. I'm sorry we're going back and forth, trustees, but we are going to go back and listen to this presentation now. That's right.
So thank you for this opportunity to share the results of our internal evaluation of our secondary math and science programs. Just to provide a little bit of context, Dr. Mattis and Mr. Minchell are here this evening to share the results of that evaluation. As a result of the discussion of board goals, the board formulated a goal to conduct this internal review of our secondary math and science review. Based on that discussion, we formulated the essential questions that would drive this evaluation. Dr. Mattis and Mr. Minchell then formulated the evaluation plan, collected data, analyzed the data, and the results of those evaluations were shared in the reports that the board received. This is going to be a synthesis of those results. So I want to thank them for the work they have been doing all year to kind of conduct this evaluation and do this deep dive into the programs, to provide areas that we see as areas of strength, and also to formulate recommendations for us in terms of moving forward.
Dr. Smythe. So as Dr. Smythe mentioned, we had 5 essential questions that we used to really guide the work that we did for this internal review. We broke down our presentation by essential question, so we'll go through each essential question and showcase where it represents in each of our departments. The first essential question is, what opportunities for interdisciplinary learning to support the transfer of understanding, knowledge, and skills are present in our course structure, curriculum, and instruction? In order to answer this question, we went directly to the source. We actually interviewed teachers and students to talk to them about where they see this happening in their coursework. The next slide is going to be about a 10-minute video that is those interviews of those different cohorts of students and teachers.
Well, it's very obvious in science class. Ever since we were very, very young, we would see that throughout all types of problems, we would have to take out our calculators and we would have to put in multiplication, division to try and work out the solution to a problem. And it becomes much more obvious, I guess, when you get older, or maybe we get more conscientious of it. But we see that when we put in those equations, you're actually doing full-length expressions where you have to take away certain units to get a new unit, such as conversions in chemistry. But also in math, I would say that when you get older, new types of problems are such as word problems get shown, where you have to use math to find the answer for a math question, but they're putting it in science world for your math class.
I also agree with that, and I also think there's a lot of connections between finding missing variables or missing numbers, measurements, and whatnot in both math and science, such as functions in Algebra 2. We do a lot of exponential, quadratic, and all different types of functions right now. And in chemistry, we also do functions in a way to like find what would happen if we were to increase one variable, how would it impact the increasing of another variable.
You can also, to add on to Julie, you can also see it in the real world. From like earth science, I've definitely seen some things that I've applied to algebra this year.
I mean, I think the stronger of a math student you are, the more successful you tend to be at chemistry. Every unit in chemistry, there's some quantitative aspect to it. So Ms. Hope and I were talking about, they haven't done this yet in chemistry, but they will in a few months, half-lives. So that is like an actual unit that has been put into Algebra 2, I think. They teach that explicitly, and we teach that also in chemistry. So the students who really know those equations and how to apply them, they breeze through that, whereas the students who don't know that, they tend to struggle with that quite a bit.
And kind of just overall in how we teach. So in math, I call it experience now, formalize later, where students in my class have to discover and problem solve and make mistakes and kind of work through things before we formalize it, before we tell them, okay, this is how you solve, this is what we do. Like we emphasize that problem solving and that thinking, that critical thinking, and that's really the scientific method, basically. And I find students that are successful in my class and in chemistry are those that are unafraid to take risks and know that that's part of the learning, and making those mistakes is going to help us later to create the formulas and then apply them.
Well, I definitely see a lot of connections, especially since in IB Math this year we're doing a lot of statistics, and in bio we also talk about statistical differences and stuff like that. And like one difference I see though is in math we focus more on numbers, and then that ends up being really helpful in bio when we do like FRQ answers, because we already know how to do the number stuff for math, and then I'm able to like learn more how to put it into words in bio.
Yeah, like how Grace said, with the FRQs for bio, a lot of them are broken up into like data specific questions, like maybe plugging into a formula, which it's easy to get those points with the skills and even calculator tricks that we use in IB Math. So it's easy to get those points on the FRQ and worry more about the bigger conceptual questions.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think math really helps like support like what we do in science when it comes to the data aspect of it.
In science, with like correlation and variables, I feel like it's really helped this year, especially because with us starting the IA, we're able to like incorporate the statistics into our projects, and I just feel like learning about correlation and graphing in science has really helped me apply that to my IA.
I also noticed most of the connection in statistics. It's almost as if math lets us make conclusions and like reliable conclusions in science, and then science gives math like a almost real world application to use the math that we learned in applications.
I think the kids did a great job in articulating that they can calculate the numbers, and I think that they learn that part in math, but then they're using it in real world problems. They call them FRQs, free response questions. It's always the justification that like, tell us how the numbers say what you're saying. And so all the new AP Sciences and IB Sciences, claims are made. Scientists make claims, and you have to use data to justify your claim. And I think they're really able to bridge that they can do the calculations, but they also know what the calculations mean. I feel like when I was in school, we did calculations and you got a number, but you didn't really know what the number meant. But I think now they know what that number has meaning, and they're able to find even errors, saying, wait a minute, that number doesn't make sense. And so I think that brings, that really helps them. No one has said it yet, but we do a lot of chi-square, and I know that you guys have learned chi-square in your math class, and so we use chi-square statistical analysis in genetics. We do chi-square when we're looking at data to know if the data that they got has meaning, if there's something that is statistically significant, or they just randomly got those numbers and has no meaning. So I think it's in almost all labs that we do. As I said, free response questions, graphing.
Yeah, I agree. I think the trickiest problem or issue we run into with math is a lot of students are just memorizing a process. But I think throughout these recent years, I've started to see that students are able to test and kind of realize if their results make sense and they understand it at a deeper level. And I've seen this throughout, specifically some of the students talked about the internal assessments. And that's a good way to bridge kind of the science and the math because they're actually writing about their calculations and then they can apply it to different fields. And I think by, even once I realized there's a connection between the sciences, by having our units start out with the students talking about that connection, it can make the learning more memorable and can allow them to apply it to future fields if they would like.
So physics and calculus are really intertwined because a lot of the physics equations are really completely based off calculus. Like speed is or velocity is the derivative of position, for example. So it's like knowing the content from the math class really elevates your understanding and makes you understand it differently.
Yeah, so in a similar vein, I found that having both a knowledge of calculus and physics, one can almost allow you to see a different perspective than, I guess, what is already taught in the class. I could give one example of an AP Physics C question that our class was really debating over after the test. And it wasn't until I really took a calculus approach to it, suggested by Mr. Wankel, that I really understood how to do it properly. It just shows that basically through utilizing those other courses, you could really get a different handle on a subject you wouldn't necessarily been able to think of before.
So in Physics 1, they're junior years mostly. Sometimes it's mostly seniors, but you get a mix of different math levels from algebra to pre-calc to IB math to AP calc to linear algebra. And so you're trying to make sure that the math doesn't hold them back from the concepts, but that hopefully the math can help their understanding. So if they can't visualize something, they can't grasp the concept of that in the physics world, at least that they can look at a graph and interpret that information, or they can read a word problem and interpret that information. And so by making those both graphical and mathematical representations like direct and showing them how to work through that process, it helps support what they see in their lab or in any other form in class.
Yeah, and physics really uses math as the primary tool for all of our science to describe and model it. And it's all about modeling the real world. And the more calculus and the more math, the higher math levels they have behind them, the more accurate we can model the world. So we take simple approaches in Regents physics to just do linear or just regular algebra type problems, because that's the level that they're at. But in the real world, things don't behave that way. So then we introduce, once they get to BC Calc and linear algebra, then we can really get into, okay, well, let's add in air resistance. Let's add in forces that vary, which normally didn't in the Regents class. Now we can take it one step further and more accurately model that, and the kids can see their math pay off, if you will.
Every year we have that too from calculus. And it's not everybody in the physics classes, but kids will often say, oh, wait a minute, we're up to this now. And that word that you use, the derivative, we did that in your class, right? You whispered that, but said, don't worry about it. And so those connections, whether it's derivatives and integrals explicitly with mathematical problems or just a graph representation of area, right? Somebody in 9th grade can do an area and calculate an area, but doing a more complicated area becomes a skill when you're dealing with air resistance or other forms in physics.
On to essential question number 2, how do standards and values inform the structure of our program as well as instruction and assessment within our program?
It's been about 10 years now since the terminology of next generation science standards kind of entered our vernacular. And I'm happy to say that it's been about 10 years that we've been working on it. through a lot of PD work that I'll talk about later with Paul Anderson and a lot of collegial circles within the classroom. We've really been developing the program to teach not only Regents level classes, but all science classes K through 12 using the protocols of Next Generation Science. Even in the video you just saw, you may have seen Ms. Kelly, who is our AP Bio teacher, talk about claims. And, you know, that terminology is very much NGSS when you want to make claims based on evidence and then try and connect those things with reasoning. So it's a three-dimensional approach. We can see that the visual on the left is showing you the three components, which is basically the practices, which is what students do. The content is what students know, and the cross-cutting concepts are how students think. Cross-cutting concepts are actually very interesting because while they are what they say they are, and they should go between different classes, they should be pertinent in almost any science class you would take, but they really can frame questions really well. If you, and it's kind of fun sometimes, I know my dinner table sounds pretty geeky, I guess, but if you like present a phenomenon and then kind of say, ask me a question about that phenomenon, most people will ask good questions, but that are like structure and function, like why is this shaped like this? What does it do? Or cause and effect. You know, if I increase this, what happens to variable B? And those are good questions that need to be answered, but they're kind of surface level questions. What the teachers in a good NGSS classroom are trying to use the other cross-cutting concepts like systems, patterns, energy, to ask deeper questions and take deeper dives into the content. The diagram on the right shows the new inquiry circle. This kind of replaces what used to be more linear scientific method. Students are usually introduced at the beginning of a new unit to a phenomenon. A really good phenomenon can kind of last throughout the entire unit. And students will start asking questions about that phenomenon. That's where the cross-cutting concepts come into play. Students then try and construct explanations for their questions and then carry out students design and carry out investigations where they collect data. That would be our evidence. And then the last point would be where students then use their reasoning, their evidence that they've collected to support their claims or disprove their claims and engage in arguments based on that evidence. Let this play first. So this is a AP Physics C. So what you can see are students were given the phenomenon. Students were given the phenomenon about how rotation affects free-falling objects. They asked a lot of really good questions, did their calculations, and then designed an experiment, which you just saw, to show the different levels that you had to release those two rolls of paper so that they would hit the ground simultaneously. That's kind of the addresses our philosophy in how we teach. North Shore, we try and ground what we teach within the North Shore journey. This is something you may recognize from last year when I spoke to you. We had just started working on the North Shore Science Performance Learning Descriptors. This is both quantitative and qualitative analysis of student performance. It really lives within the North Shore journey in terms of growth in academic proficiency and mastery. We've added new categories, basically in the sense that a Regents exam, for example, you're looking at students that did not pass versus proficiency versus mastery. We wanted to create smaller jumps so that students had an easier time going from category to category. So we added a category between below standard of proficiency, which is developing, and then after mastery, we added the distinguished category. So this chart just represents the grade, the assessment grade range for each category, and this was created by the secondary science staff. So the quantitative is the grades, the qualitative is the habits. Again, I did show this last year when I presented, so it may look a little familiar. What I'm really pleased with about this is last year this just lived on paper. So these were some habits of a developing student. I'm not going to read it off necessarily, and hopefully you do have this. These would be the habits of proficiency, mastery, and distinguished. And again, by adding those extra levels, we've made a smaller jump. But aside from just existing on paper, I'm really happy to report that many of our teachers are trying to utilize these in designing tools. For example, one really effective tool, this is in 6th grade, the students keep a science journal. At the back of the journal, each student has those descriptors on a yellow piece of paper. And at the end of the quarter, they kind of self-reflect and they say, how did I do this quarter? What habits did I exhibit? How can I get to that next level? What do I need to do to really advance my learning in this class? And it's been making a really good difference, and it really stirs really good conversation between the teacher and the students. Another utilization in the high school is that our physics teachers are using these to help create more efficient lab groupings. So by looking at student habits, they're trying to create a heterogeneous lab group where students can really cooperate with each other and be more effective in that way.
Similar to science, we have the next generation math learning standards, which have been, rolled out at the elementary level through 8th grade for a few years now. And in Algebra 1, last year was the first year that was tested. Geometry will be tested this year, and Algebra 2 next year. And this was a shift from the Common Core standards. The shifts were relatively minor, but intentional. And the teachers are well versed in it, and we've done curriculum projects to get them prepared to be able to prepare the students for those upcoming new Regents exams. But the overall progression from middle school to high school emphasizes the development of cognitive and analytical skills as students transition from the concrete to abstract thinking. The curriculum focuses on modeling complex relationships, enhancing problem-solving strategies, and fostering critical thinking, all while encouraging effective communication of mathematical ideas. Ultimately, it aims to empower students with a mathematical mindset that promotes flexible, analytical thinking applicable to real-world situations rather than merely achieving proficiency in math. So it's really that continuum that we're looking at. So also to connect to the North Shore journey, because that's a really big part of what we looked at throughout this entire internal review. We have our North Shore K-12 mathematics teaching and learning philosophy, and just looking at the connection between the two. Really, math is that key tool that develops critical thinking and problem-solving skills, and that goes beyond the math classroom. We're hoping that students are using those critical thinking strategies and skills that they're learning in math in their everyday lives. So I broke it down into 4 different areas just to look at. Engaging learning experiences, what is happening in the classroom. Students are collaborating, they're working in groups, they're reflecting in journals, they're doing your standard guided and independent tasks, but all of this is to foster communication, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. There are 5 key components to the K-12 mathematics teaching and learning philosophy, and they are outlined in the diagram in the bottom right-hand corner. Concepts, skills, process, metacognition, and attitude. And this aligns with the district's goals of nurturing resilience and growth mindset. And you can see in the image there that was taken actually in one of the teachers' classrooms. They had the growth mindset posters up in the room, and you can see that throughout many of our math classrooms throughout the middle school and the high school. Our approach is holistic, and it ensures that students experience increasingly complex challenges that are appropriate for them, helping them to grow not only mathematically, but again, with those broader life skills that they're taking from learning to think critically and problem solve in math. And ultimately, we want to create mathematical thinkers. We want to know how they're thinking about math, not just whether they got the answer right or wrong. And we want them to be able to take that beyond the classroom. Essential question number 3. What are the impacts of our program on students as evidenced by participation, perception, achievement, accomplishments, and preparation for post-secondary experiences?
I know we both sent you very lengthy reports, and there is a lot in there. But I think the takeaway from the New York State assessments, at least, is that we're doing really well and really outperforming the region. The region is what we refer to as the region is really about 48 school districts just in Nassau County. So if you look at your report, the first gap report there is really just like a passing grade, like we beat, let's say we beat the region by 19% in earth science, I believe, just in passing rate. What this is showing you is a little bit different. This gap is really a question by question gap. So as an example, if you look at earth science, I'm saying we have a plus 11.4% regional gap. What that means is if you're looking at individual questions, if you average that up, for each question on the exam, we were ahead of the region by, total gap 11.4% for earth science, let's say. So that's what we're looking at here. And the reason we broke it down like this is because we like to take a look at multiple choice gaps versus constructed response gap. And it's a point of pride that in most cases, here 3 out of 4, our constructed response gap is actually higher than our multiple choice gap. And that really makes a lot of sense because knowing the way we teach in science with all the hands-on activities and all the problem solving that goes on, we would expect our students to excel in everything, but to excel even more within the constructed response. Another point that's not on here is the ultimate constructed response question really is the earth science lab practical. And in that case, the region had about 25% of students get a perfect score on that, 16 out of 16. We had 44% get a perfect score. So that gap would be plus 19%, which we're really proud of. Just so you know, this is the last year that we're going to be giving the old Regents exams. The new NGS exams are going to start with earth science and biology next year and then followed the year after with chemistry and physics. They are actually getting rid of the lab practical, which I feel badly about because I really do think it's a great experience, but they are replacing it with mandatory labs that the students have to do throughout the year. And then we really have to wait to see how they ask questions about those labs on the test. We really just don't know yet. One thing I wanted to revisit from last year, which I'm very happy about, you may remember last year physics was a particular focus. Our June 23 results were definitely not up to North Source standards. And we spent a lot of time working on that. There were a lot of strategies involved and a lot of meetings and checkpoints. And the good news is, as you can see from that last bar all the way to the right, our mastery level, which is the dark green, shot up significantly. And the below 65 levels, the orange and the red, shrunk significantly in physics. So we are back on track and doing much, much better. So I just wanted to bring that up. In terms of AP and IB scores in science, we also continue to outperform global averages with the exception of IB physics, HL2. Last year was the final year that we were offering IB physics HL2, nothing to do with the results or anything, but Mr. Galati at the time was a big proponent on asking us to consider AP Physics C, the calculus base, and as you can see from the toilet paper example I sent before, it's going very well. So that was that. But overall, our AP and IB scores are very good and outperform global and New York State.
So similar to science, we see that on our gap reports here, total gap, multiple choice, and constructed response for Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, and for the New York State test for 6th and 7th grade, we are outperforming the region in every area. One of, point of pride is that the constructed response gap is significantly higher than even the multiple choice, and I think that really aligns with our philosophy of focusing on the process and how they're arriving at their answer and not just the right or wrong answer. So it really aligns with our philosophy and what's going on in our classroom. Same here for AP and IB. We exceeded the global average significantly in all test areas for our our 3 AP exams and our 2 IB exams. And again, those are pretty significant averages higher than the global average. So the next area here that we're going to be looking at are 3 individual surveys that we created specifically for this review. And it's to look at perception, parent perception, the middle school students, and the high school students. And we gave these all out in the fall in various ways. So for the parent survey, we sent it out and we had 291 responses to the survey. We did allow for multiple responses if you had children who were in grades 6 through 12. And we'll go over these results now. So there were 3 areas that I wanted to highlight for math. The first question that we asked is, where would you place your child's skill proficiency in math on a scale of 1 to 5? 1 being tends to struggle with math, 5, math is a general area of strength. And as you can see by the graph, majority of parents have identified that math is a general area of strength for their students. Another 2 areas that I think are really important is, okay, so they have that skill proficiency, but are they being appropriately supported and are they being appropriately challenged? So those bottom 2 graphs, on the left hand is appropriately challenged, on the right side is being appropriately supported. And they had, again, scale of 1 to 5, 1 being strongly disagree, 5 being strongly agree, and you can see that it was trending in the agree or strongly agree in both areas. So they're finding it as an area of strength, but also finding that it's appropriate in terms of challenge and support.
Similar to math, we asked the same exact questions. The only difference I would say from the math, which was kind of like a perfect staircase going up, you can see in the very top graph, just in terms of proficiency in science, that for answer 4, which is still a very good feeling of proficiency, kind of outperformed the highest agreement with that question. And that may have, something to do with first-time regents in 8th grade and living environment, and the fact that the majority of our students are asked to take that class in 8th grade. So that might explain that. But otherwise, we see really similar results. Parents feel that their students are placed properly and motivated and also supported.
School survey, we had 427 responses. It was given out during E3 Squad in November. So just to give you a little background on how these graphs work. So it's based on percentage. So it's the total number of students who answered the question for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. We broke it down by grade level. And then each bar is the responses stacked based on the legend that's represented in the graph. So for example, for the one on the left, which was math readiness, this really connected similarly with the parents, that the students feel like they were ready and able to handle the math class that they're currently in. Yellow is that they agreed or that strong, and then blue is very strong in terms of their math readiness. So you could see across the board, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, that the students generally are feeling ready and able to tackle the math class that they're in. Again, looking at that support, they're also finding that they are receiving the appropriate support that they need to be successful in math. And this really ties those 2 things together. So your current math class, how would you describe it? And they had the options of too easy all the way to too difficult. And majority of the students selected right in the middle, selected a 3, just right. There were some that picked easy or difficult, but very few students picked too easy or too difficult. So again, they hovered in that 2, 3, or 4 range on a scale of 1 to 5 when asked about describing their current math class.
So these are the same 2 graphs for science. You can see the graph on the left that the feeling of readiness level seems to increase a bit in grade 7, which is evident by the more blue on top. And then it kind of drops back down a little bit in 8th grade, which again makes sense given the first-time Regents exam course in living environment. But despite students maybe feeling a little bit more of a struggle, you could see from the chart on the right that the engagement and motivation remains very constant across the grade levels. So, I think that's a really healthy visual, because there's nothing wrong with a little bit of struggle in a course. I mean, so luckily we're not seeing students, an overabundance of students saying that it's too hard or that they're struggling too much. Most students still are within the range of feeling that it's just right and that they're properly placed, which is why I think motivation and engagement remain high. This graph deals with the rigor level. Question was asked in terms of the difficulty of the class. And again, as we would expect, the 8th grade finds the rigor of living environment. The graph shows the rigor of living environment kind of taking effect as more students are finding it more difficult instead of what they would consider like a perfect placement in grade 7, as evident by the larger red in the middle in the 7th grade bar. Again, I think this is healthy. I think it's good we're not seeing too much of the pink, which would be too difficult. There is pink in all of the grade levels, so it's not like too difficult suddenly pops up in 8th grade. And I would say that the too difficult line is fairly consistent throughout the grades. This question deals with support, if they feel well supported. This is also fairly consistent throughout the grade level. There's a little bit more uncertainty in grade 8 about support. And I think that what students are finding is 8th grade might be the first time that they really require some extra help. I think 6th grade science, 7th grade science, a lot of students really seem to be able to tackle that on their own with minimal support. 8th grade, I think they're finding that they need that extra support, so there might be some uncertainty in what's the best way to go about fulfilling that.
Now moving on to the high school survey, we asked very similar questions of the high school students as we did to the middle school students, and then we added a few to start looking at that post-secondary, what they might be interested in going forward, and how they see that connection in math and science. There were 516 responses to our high school survey. The graphs are set up the same way as the middle school, but now you'll see all 4 grades represented. So for the first graph on the left-hand side, how would you describe your current math class? So we asked them that same question. And again, you're seeing that majority are saying just right, or it's either easy or difficult. Very few are picking too easy or too difficult. See a little variation among the grade levels there. In the 12th grade, we don't see too easy. Which makes a lot of sense based on the courses that many of those students are taking. But then interestingly, too easy for 11th grade, which was surprising to me. On the right-hand side, we have academic support systems. And again, the yellow and the blue are going to be that they strongly agree or agree that there is support in place. And pleased to see that, many of them feel that there is adequate support. It's a testament to the teachers and their availability for extra help. And our math center, which we centrally located in the library this year, it has a home base and it's open all of the lunch periods. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about where I see that expanding going forward. So then we asked them to select what they believe, they might pursue in the future. So we gave them the options of business, education, engineering, health, military, or other. And so we cross-referenced those responses with engagement and motivation in math class. And so you can see that they really do vary depending on their career path. And, still seeing a lot of yellow there, which is strong, strong motivation, that they agree that they're motivated and engaged in math class, but there definitely is variation based on their career path. But it was this graph that I think really gave me some work to bring back to the department. And this is really where, do you see your interest linked to what you're learning in math? And there's definitely a lot of variability in that. And there was a lot of students that really picked 3, which they were uncertain of that, or they just were kind of neutral in terms of whether or not they're seeing that connection to what their interests are in math. So, for me, that means we need to go back and think more about those real world connections and applications in math. And I think that's something that we can work on as a department.
Science, also, I like that there is consistency through the grades for the most part. You could see on the graph on the left, that question deals with students, describing their class as difficult or too easy. So if we're starting from the bottom, the orange, the kind of gold color would be difficult, going into easy. Sorry, it's hard to see. Yeah, difficult, easy, perfect, too difficult, and then the blue finally is too easy. So again, I think it's good that we're not seeing a lot of too difficult or too easy. Most students feel they're properly placed. There is a slight increase in 12th grade for students that feel that the course is easy, which is surprising considering a lot of the 12th grade options are some of our most rigorous classes. But then we also, in thinking about it too, we also offer a lot of courses like forensics or environmental science or classes that are more geared towards students' particular interests. So I would hope that that is what's influencing that as well. The graph on the right deals with engagement and motivation. And again, I think it's a healthy distribution that's fairly consistent throughout the grade levels. This graph about support, I was a little surprised that students who feel they were not being supported as well in 11th grade, you could see that orange kind of shrinks a little bit. And it's not dramatic, but I do really want to look into that, and it actually is one of the focuses at the end of the report. I'll talk a little bit more about it. I think what students are finding, when you go into 9th grade earth science, 10th grade chemistry, there's 5 different teachers teaching earth science. There's 5 different teachers, 4 or 5 teaching chemistry. So if a student can't necessarily get to their own teacher's extra help, there are other avenues they can take. When you get into 11th and 12th grade, we have one teacher who teaches AP Bio, 3 sections of it. So, it just makes it a little bit more difficult, I think, if you need immediate assistance. Again, I'm conjecturing here, but I think that may have something to do with it. So I would like to look into that as a step going forward. In terms of our career path, it kind of came out the way I expected, in the sense that students that are focused on a career in engineering or in health seem to be the most engaged and motivated, which would make sense. But there is, healthy motivation across the boards, with the exception of military. Military doesn't seem to really enjoy science as much as some of the other career paths, which I think we have to do a better job on too, because so much of the military is engineering and science-based. And then this last graph here is about the clear pathway. So if we focus on engineering and health, health has a really nice distribution, I think, of students agreeing or strongly agreeing that there is a clear path. Engineering, it's not as clear. I think there's more uncertainty as to what engineering students should take. And I think that has something to do with the interdisciplinary aspect of an engineering career, where it is science, but then you also have to take the right math courses as well. You also have to look into engineering or computer science classes. So I think there's more to choose from within engineering. So I think, and I'll speak about this again with goals, but I would like to see our guidance department, in conjunction with the directors, really work on maybe some stronger visuals or clear pathways to what a student should take. Our next video, which talks about
I
impactful
definitely think
courses.
that I want to pursue a international business sort of thing, and I think a lot of the math that I've taken, especially the class I'm taking now, it's statistics and all the finance work that we do. It's probably going to help me, and I'll definitely see it again in the future. But I also wanted to talk about how taking a rigorous course like AP Bio, when you don't want to go into that, is still important to take. Miss Kelly told me that her son would take challenging courses a lot, even though it's not what he wanted to pursue, just to show that you're applying yourself to these challenging courses, to show that you put yourself out there. And I think that's really important to think about, especially when you consider what you want to study in the future.
I guess I'll piggyback off of you. I'm similar with Finn. I do really enjoy a financial market and interactions with the people. I guess that business realm is something of interest to me. I would agree with him on the aspects of that. Taking courses, like Ms. Kelly said, is great for us because we're not to mention we're learning stuff that we, even though we might not know or might not like now, we might even be interested in it later. And to have that background information is great. I would also say that certain things in our math, like Finn did say as well, our statistics and our calculus, all in that math inclusive area, gathering data, having ways to understand what data means, because in the real world we need to understand what things mean and how we can apply them to actually make real world decisions. I'd also say something for me is as I work in the DECA, the club outside of school, we work a lot on also competing, so that's a lot of math integrated into our work. We're working on trying to apply real world problems as we just competed the event. My group, what I participated in, was actually working on trying to find out the problems in a business and solve it financially to not only save the company, but also try to find a positive aspect and make some profit.
Similarly to them, I'm also interested in like a business major in the future. And I think IB math this year has been really helpful compared to every other math because in IB we do a lot of word problems. Like we start by learning the basics, but then we use word problems. And I feel like that's like, we haven't done that in past years. And I'm also like particularly interested in real estate. And we've done a unit this year where we talk a lot about money. And it's like completely opened my eyes up to like this whole new like realm of math and how I can really apply it into a major in the future.
Yeah, I'm interested in pre-med, specifically like anesthesiology. So I feel like chemistry has really helped me with that, definitely. But also definitely applying AP Bio, obviously, to the medical route. But I also feel like the class, anatomy and physiology that I'm taking, the elective, has definitely really helped me because it's like sort of helped me balance and connect AP Bio with it because it kind of follows that course. And just having like two classes side by side like that this year has really helped me to like connect it overall and just always like have it in my mind.
More STEM like, I know that I really want to pursue research. Like I want to go to graduate school, I want to get a PhD, but I do not know specifically what STEM field I would want to pursue the research in. And I think North Shore has really done a great job at offering me as many options as possible to help me figure out what I'm interested in, because I don't know if I truly want to like stick with one specific field or topic right now at this young age before exploring everything that there is to offer in STEM. So I really appreciate how North Shore offers like AP Physics, AP Biology, AP Chemistry, and I can take these all throughout high school to kind of learn about all the different sciences and see what I may be interested in researching in the future. And also, of course, North Shore's Science Research Program, which I am part of, is a great way of, again, learning how research works and how to perform it properly, which not a lot of other high schoolers have in the country. So it's a really great opportunity at North Shore specifically.
Essential question number 4. To what extent are our teachers prepared to teach advanced courses in STEM?
We do a lot of professional development, both in-house and outside the building. This chart is an example of most of the things that have gone on recently. I think you can divide this into course-specific PD versus like overarching PD. So course-specific, an example would be, you know, they're changing some of the curriculum in AP Physics 1. So we sent Ms. Lamar for training for that. Another example would be the new NGSS exams are coming up with the new lab investigations that I mentioned. So we're sending in March all of our earth science and biology teachers for training on how to do the lab. So that's very course specific. Overarching would be really, I think, the work that we've been doing with Paul Anderson even though it's kind of tied to NGSS, but it's really more theoretical and it's really more our philosophy of teaching. And we've been working, he's been here 3 times over the past 8 years, spent a couple of days each trip, and really have worked with all levels of the faculty in different groupings to really embed the NGSS philosophy. And he's run parent workshops here and stuff. He's been a really great resource for the district, and I'm really proud of how far we've come over these past 8 years, and I'm looking forward to the assessments now kind of catching up with the course description, which will be nice next year. It's been challenging to kind of teach in the NGSS world, but still take the old Regents exams, because there is some difference there, but we've been doing a pretty good job. Another PD that's coming up on Monday, actually, the Mini One systems. This is something I'm really excited about. We up until this point, we've paid a lot of money to be a member of Cold Spring Harbor Labs, and we take visits there once a year to do electrophoresis for DNA analysis. And now with the Mini One system, we've kind of been able to spend that money up front in one shot to buy these Mini One systems that are going to allow us to do all of that work in-house. So then it is cost effective over the years, because then we only have to buy the replacement chemicals for it. But the main it was front loaded in terms of the major expense. What I like about this too is, aside from the fact that students now don't have to miss a whole day of other classes, I mean, there is value to leaving the building, I feel, and going, but I think we can get really creative with what we want to do with this. I think this will go beyond just biology. I know our forensics teacher is going to be trained in this as well, for like crime scene analysis of DNA samples. And I think the better we get with the system, we can find a lot of really different uses for it. So I am really excited about the training and that.
On this chart here, you can see various professional development opportunities that our teachers have taken part in the last year. A few that I'll highlight, just specific to those advanced courses. IB training. I'm actually going along with Lauren DeLuca to IB training in March, and we've had some staffing changes in the department, and we needed someone to be our IB analysis teacher and have that training. And so I thought it was a great opportunity for myself to actually go and really learn and be able to support that curriculum as a director. In addition, there were 2 AP course professional development opportunities. One was over this past summer when Mr. Winkle took over our Calculus BC class. He had taught Calculus AB before and our non-AP Calculus, so he's familiar with Calculus, but he had not done the BC before, so he did a 3-day training. He said it was extremely helpful and really prepared him to get ready for this school year. And then in December, Christine Constantine, who's our AP statistics teacher, she went to Cold Spring Harbor High School, where there were teachers from all over the island that came together as a collegial circle to really just talk about best strategies, network, and look at what's happening around the island in these AP courses. Some of the other professional development workshops that are listed on here are more about the instructional side of it. How are we presenting the math instruction to our students, building thinking classrooms, looking at more group work, student-centered learning in our secondary classrooms. Central question number 5. What are the greatest strengths of our program, and what are recommendations for next steps?
So I think we have a lot of things to be really proud of, and a lot of strengths that were made doing this review really very enjoyable for me. It was a lot of work for both of us, but it was also really eye-opening and a real point of pride. Some of the ones that stood out are the student engagement and participation in science. There's only a 3-year science requirement in the high school, but 93% of our seniors are taking a science class. And so that's something that has been pretty consistent throughout the years and continues to be a sign of motivation and engagement in the program. I think we have a very innovative curriculum between having both AP and IB courses and trying to make that work out for everybody to reach the goals that they have set for themselves, plus a robust offering of really any type of science class, whether it's for students that tend to maybe struggle a little bit more with science, there are courses like conceptual physics or super forensics that will challenge them, but will meet them at a level where they can really find success. Also, student achievement, as you'll see when you have a chance to delve into the reports, we stand out among all the schools within the region, and even if we narrow that down to the neighboring, the big 12 schools of Jericho and Roslyn, everybody, we're right in there and really hold up and perform very well. Other areas of strength would be the professional development that I just mentioned. I think that really is a strength of the district, not just the science department. The fact that really any type of professional development, I've really never been told by central office that, you can't do this or that's not worth it. We always seem to be able to work it out. Sometimes we may need to get a little creative, but I just think that that's such an important thing that we teachers know that they can really get the support and get the development that they need to get. And then equity and access. If you look through a lot of other districts' course catalogs, there's a lot of prerequisites. If you want to take honors chemistry, you have to have an 85 or above on the earth science regents or whatever. We don't really do that for the most part here. We really like to make our courses open to everybody, and let the students try from the beginning a fresh new start and try and support them and really get them to be successful. So I think that's a real strength of our district as well. In terms of areas of focus, since we do kind of make all these rigorous courses easier access to them, there are some discrepancies in mastery rates, let's say, between the disabled student population versus the general ed population. So that's something I want to continuously focus on, especially with the new NGSS Regents exams coming out. They seem, there's not a lot of information on them. We're really excited to see the first exam that comes out this June, even though we're taking it next year. But the feeling is that it is going to be very literacy heavy. A lot of multiple charts and graphs and paragraphs to read before you even get to the question. So we really want to make sure we do a good job supporting our students, all our students, but especially the ones that tend to struggle with more literacy heavy work. So we want to make sure that that's in place. As I mentioned, from looking at the graphs, I was a little concerned about the academic support dropping a bit for high school juniors and seniors. So I really also want to look into that and see if there's anything we can do to kind of increase opportunities for them to feel more supported. We toyed with the idea. I know there's a math center, which Kim might speak to. It doesn't work that well in science because if you have a earth science teacher covering period 5 at the science center and somebody comes in with an AP physics question, they might not be able to be that helpful. So, because of the different disciplines that you're certified in. Pathway guidance, that was also alluded to from the career charts. I really am interested in working towards some visuals and some clearer pathways. Even in the report, I did lay out some pathways based on student interest and rigor level in the report. So if you take a look at that, I know Dr. Z and I have spoken about almost kind of like creating like majors or like, based on what your interest might be and kind of laying out a pathway to get there. So that's definitely something I want to continue to look at. And as the new NGSS exams come into play and we finally make the full dunk into the NGS swimming pool as opposed to just dipping our foot in, we have to make sure that we're continuing with rigorous training for our teachers and really supporting the new curriculum in ways that will be successful. So in terms of next steps, these are all laid out. I'm not going to read all of this, but for example, just the enhancing pathway visibility. So the description would be to develop a science pathway guide to help students and families visualize course trajectories. This would be aimed at students and families, and the expected outcome would hopefully be greater awareness of STEM career opportunities and the pathways to get them there.
One area of strength, really is the academic performance, and it's a testament to the teachers and the students and the hard work that they put in. We're consistently outperforming the regional averages in math. We were #1 in Nassau County for grades 3 through 8 for students achieving a 3 or a 4 on the New York State Math Assessment. And again, our AP IB also high pass rates there as well. We had 100% of students pass the Algebra 2 regions. We had 98% of students pass the Algebra 1 regions and 99% of students pass the geometry regions. So again, we're seeing consistently that our students are doing exceptionally well on these tests. And then tied into that is really our program structure. Clear pathways for student progression. They're able to make those connections from class to class. Math is extremely linear, so if they're doing well in Algebra 1, they're going to do well in Algebra 2, and we're going to see that through line. We have multiple acceleration opportunities for our students, and something that I hadn't mentioned earlier, but it is in my report. Our students with disabilities and our English language learners are achieving those same scores. So it's really impressive, and we're always looking for ways in which we can improve and create support for our diverse student population. And we have a high participation in 4-year math completion. Currently, the class of 2025, 90% of them are in a 4th year of math. Student engagement, math research at the high school continues to be successful, and we have students that go to Long Island Math Fair and do very well every year. I'm going to talk a little bit about what that might look like at the middle school going forward as one of my areas of focus. This year, we did make some changes to Mu Alpha Theta, which is our honor society. We changed the criteria and we reinstated our charter. We had 73 students, juniors and seniors, that were inducted into Mu Alpha Theta in December. They have also implemented a peer tutoring program that started about a month ago, and just anecdotally, teachers have come to me to say that their students are really enjoying the opportunity to have that after-school help and feel it is really beneficial. In 6th and 7th grade this year, we added a math enrichment elective, which is an optional class that students can participate in if they want to take math to that next level, look at more open-ended problem solving, and really, if that's their area and their passion, it's really a great opportunity for them. And in my report, I put the breakdown of participation for semester 1 and semester 2. So then for areas of focus, I'd really like to expand opportunities for math research at the middle school. Currently, it is a club for 7th and 8th graders. I'm in talks with Dr. O'Hara about how we can maybe add that at least for 8th grade as an elective to give them that opportunity to really look at what that might look like going forward into the high school when they have that option as a 0 period to really cultivate that math research in 8th grade. So that's something that I'm hoping that we can get off the ground soon. Math center utilization and availability, 72% of students reported never visiting the math center. But to that end, 143 students said they visited at least once a month. So I do take that as a win and as success. But of course, I would like to see more students have the opportunity. We're currently open during the lunch periods only. So I'd like to increase awareness and maybe availability before or after school, or maybe an additional period. That just, again, gives more access for students to get that support and that help. And then obviously continuing professional development. Some of this is around in-house, looking more at vertical alignment and articulation. And specifically, I'm going to advance to the next slide, really looking at with departmentalization in 5th grade, which all 3 buildings will be next year, looking at how we can start to bring those 5th grade math teachers into that conversation to work on that transition from 5th to 6th grade, and really looking at that preparation for all students to get to algebra in 8th grade, and really think about how we can best support them as they journey through. And here, I really outlined all of this when I was speaking in the previous slide. Thank you.
I just forgot to mention, science research is a very big area of strength, and you saw proof of that tonight. But our program is consistently winning awards in events big and small, so that is on there. I did forget to mention that. So.
Thank you so much. It was very comprehensive, and everyone should know there was over 100 pages of backup that we all went through, which was great. Who would like to start? No takers. Thank you.
Well, first of all, thank you so much. Yeah, I think the backup was so robust, and I don't have that many questions because not only was your presentation so comprehensive, but your backup was as well. So thank you for all of that. I'm sure a lot of hard work went into that. Many hours. um, as Andrea said, it was, yeah, I think it was, if I remember correctly, I think math was something like 54 pages and science was 68 pages. So it was a lot. So I was really.
And I should add, Lisa called me at about 7:30 this morning to discuss it.
I really enjoyed the interdisciplinary learning discussions there. We've talked a lot about that here, and it's really, it's great to see that happening. I am curious if we would consider going to the next level and having interdisciplinary learning that occurs between like a math and an English or a science and a social studies, and if that's something that you've thought about. I know I've heard or read about I don't know, the opioid crisis and learning the chemistry of the drugs and also writing letters to legislators. So you're combining, English and chemistry. So any thoughts and.
I think it's a really good point, and I think it actually ties into what we were talking about with those interests, like student interests, and how to see that within the courses that they're taking. One thing I will say about the IB classes that they talked about that internal assessment. They do get that opportunity to write a paper. They get to focus on something that they like. But again, making that a larger focus in some of the other classes, I think it's a really a great idea and a great point.
Yeah, also, I think I think we both ended our reports about the new graduation requirements that are coming up. So I think there will be opportunities, which are really great opportunities that might arise out of that when we're not as test-centric in terms of Regents requirements. And hopefully that could open up some floodgates that would allow for course offerings or assessments that, teachers don't have to be so worried about finishing all the curriculum by a certain date or something. So I think it's a great idea, and it is done like in a lot of the IB classes with IAs and things like that, extended essays combine that as well. But hopefully there'll be more opportunities going forward.
Great. I mean, you're doing such amazing work, so I'm not surprised you had an answer ready for me on that. I'll say you're both great teachers because when I first looked at the bar graphs, I couldn't figure out why you put the agree next to the disagree next, it didn't make sense to me. But then when you explained it, it all made perfect sense. So thank you for that. I was just curious also about how we evaluate, like that forensics course as an elective in the middle school sounds amazing. I want to go back and take it. And I'm just wondering, how do we evaluate the success of courses like that? And I was also curious, is it the same teacher who teaches it in the high school also teaches in the middle school, or is it different teachers?
Middle school, it's all the electives in the middle school. It's kind of schedule based. It's like we look each year enrollment, who's taking the classes, how many sections do we need? Certain teachers have room in their schedule, so we like to keep the forensics teachers historically teaching forensics versus the comparative anatomy teachers, usually Ms. Mistretta every year, so we try and keep that consistent. In the high school, Mr. Casino has been teaching the super forensics, so the students do get Syracuse University credit for taking that class. So he's been trained by Syracuse University, and he's our guy for that. We did used to run a forensics elective as well, but we found there was too much redundancy, and so we're kind of at the point now where we're just running the super forensics class. And really the success of it is really based on the fact of how many students are taking it, the fact that it's grown. I think we've been running it now. I think right after COVID was the first year we ran it because he was supposed to go to Syracuse for training, but it turned out to be virtual. So it's gone from one section to two sections. Now we're running 3 full sections of it. So, yeah.
It's great. And I think my last question is, and maybe it's more of a comment than a question. I love those videos of those students. I mean, they are all so eloquent and, obviously very successful at what they're doing. And I love that we teach those students because we do such a good job of doing that. I guess I do want to see a little more of the children who struggle. The other side, I would love to see how we help those students. And I know those lines on the bar graphs were much smaller, but they do represent actual students. So I would love to see more of what we do with the children who struggle academically and who might not be taking those higher level AP and IB courses, and how do we still keep it interesting for them and help them.
A small example, I know there's a lot, but in looking at the 8th grade living environment regions last year, we had the January regions was just given a few weeks ago. So the students in 8th grade that struggled, some of them either passed the course but didn't pass the region, some of them didn't pass either. But I am proud to report that out of the students that didn't pass in 8th grade, as of last week, or whenever the test was given, they've all since passed the regions. And that's not just happenstance. There was a lot of support given in 9th grade with bio teachers on their off periods as an AIS assignment, working with individual students and getting them through to the point. And that included an E&L student and other students that needed that support. So it's just a small example of, but there is a lot more to be done.
Steve,
That's great.
just-
So,
I just want to clarify. So those students took bio. They did not repeat earth science, but they got extra earth science tutoring on the side. That's how they passed?
No, these are 8th grade, last year's
Right,
8th graders that, so if they passed the course but didn't pass the regions,
Oh, right, living
they went
environment,
into
right.
earth science as their course.
That's what I meant.
And I checked that, and they're doing pretty nicely in earth science as well, but have now since passed the living environment region.
I got it. I flipped them. Okay,
Yeah.
perfect. Thank you.
that's great. So now I have a follow-up question to that. Is there something, so obviously, those students have now passed. Is there something we could have or should have done differently when they were in 8th grade? Are there any lessons there that we can learn? Like, I wonder what it was, because obviously they got it.
It's a great question.
Yeah, it is a really great question. I'm not sure if I have a perfect answer for that. I mean, sometimes I think it's indicative of the fact that it is a success that we have so many 8th graders taking it, because even for the ones that didn't necessarily pass the regions right away, they're now in earth science doing well and have passed the regions. And I think sometimes it's just a readiness factor of a student, a developing child there's a big difference between an 8th grader and a 9th. That summer, something magical happens there. So I think part of it is just the readiness level. Some of it is just getting to see that information again for a second time and having it suddenly click along. But that is a really good question, and it's a complex question.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for all of your hard work and all of the work that you're doing with our students. Thank you.
I mean, it could be that it was more one-on-one or small group AIS, right? Versus being in a big class.
But they're also juggling, though. If they're currently taking earth science, they have a full palette. Sometimes the AIS is every other day, and they're giving up a lunch period to meet with the teacher. So it's not it's a helpful scenario,
Right.
but it's not like it's not necessarily a small group setting as much as just really going over. Well, the other thing that I'm thinking of now is the first thing we do when we do the AIS is we take that students, I go into the basement and I find their Regents exam, their answers, right? And then we really have a chance to analyze what did they get, what did they struggle with on that test. So the AIS is very focused. It's very directed towards those areas. So they're seeing the information for a second time. It's very directed, and that small one-to-one AIS, I think all those things contribute to it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was interesting as there was a lot, and it was great, is what I'm trying to say. Because, as Lisa said, we got so much. I don't have a ton of questions. I I love that we started interdisciplinary. That really also I'm gonna probably repeat some what stuck out for Lisa. It speaks to that authentic learning piece, and that the real we a previous meeting we talked about that transactional versus transformational type of learning, and that stuck out to me a couple times during this presentation, in fact. And I thought it was really interesting that in one of the closing pieces, one of the students really spoke about rigor from the lens of that transactional piece, which was kind of I thought really interesting. One of the students was like, they want to see that from colleges, that we're really kind of challenging ourselves, and we get that opportunity, which is great. Something that Lisa touched on that I also kind of stuck out for me was, and this is true for a lot of the types of surveys that we do, it's that selection bias of the people who are opting in to give us the information. And so, similar to what Lisa had mentioned, you got the parents of the kids who are not struggling in math to come and tell you like, hey, we're doing great in math. So it's kind of that constant tension of like, how do we excavate the families that are really not maybe taking advantage of all that we have to offer, or for whom we could be providing something different. So I don't know that we really got to that conversation yet. So I just kind of wanted to throw that on the radar, as the math and science people might have an answer to that question, using a different approach potentially. And I unfortunately can propose the problem, but not the solution.
I think we need Eli Wesley Jones to figure that one out.
Right, maybe it's a future science research project or math research project. I wanted to also further support from a board position the idea of creating structure around that extracurricular math in the middle school. I know from our personal experience as a family, but also from going through the program, that the kids really do need more supervision. They bring the interest and the enthusiasm, but just not really like the how. And so it sounds like you want to respond to that.
Just because it's come up, and I know actually you and I spoke about it last year, but also when I speak with Ms. Frailer, who is, in charge of the club, she always says, I wish I could give them more. There's just not time. There have been, I had learned that over the years, Mr. Wenkel sometimes had like a 0.1 where he could come over and be available during the lunch periods. We just haven't had that opportunity since I've been here the past year to give that, but looking at other ways in which we can build that in. And I think really, for me, starting with 8th grade is important because we'd like to see that transfer over to the high school and continue to build that program there, and then see where we can go, from there. So I completely agree. And we're hearing that from the students and the teachers who are involved, that they want to give as much support as possible, because the research is difficult for them to do as a 7th or 8th grader. They've never done anything like it before, and they're really doing a lot of it independently. So I completely agree.
And we see, the model of National History Day and what they can bring to the table when there's like a structure that they're offered. And there are so many talented mathematicians, and we have to give kind of yes, like my brain stops working at a certain point in the night, and my word finding is always a challenge for me. But obviously, Dr. Smythe, set this incredible framework of curriculum and structure and the elementary education, and the kids are coming with this just incredible passion. I always say, and I can't not take the opportunity. I wish I learned math the way that our kids are learning math, because it's just so flexible, so intuitive. So to kind of, using that model of the National History Day to give them a way to explore math, they just can't do it by themselves. So
up into that, and I think it also ties to their interests, and it all kind of comes full circle, with what we've been
Can I just follow up on that? That's on my list too. I went to school here, and back then we all did math history. Was not math history. The Long Island,
Math Fair?
yeah, Long Island Math Fair. I met my first boyfriend there, and it was part of the honors class. So if you were in the honors class, it was like the authentic assessment that you worked on the entire year, just like they do the national history.
So it's interesting that you bring
Yeah.
that up because Mr. Wenkel had come to me. He does the geometry class at the middle school, and he was saying that he really is just working with some stellar students this year, and he's working through the curriculum pretty quickly. He's like, what else can I do with them? So he's actually been working on research with them, and I think majority of them are going to go to the Long Island Math Fair. So we kind of quietly piloted it with them because there was time and they had the ability to do it. So it is something that I've discussed, and we're definitely working on any avenue where we can build that in, definitely at the middle school.
While we're talking about the middle school, I also just my own personal opinion and the cohort that I had exposure to, when I had a child in the middle school, there was an opportunity to work, and I think this is relevant to you guys, and having an option of leaving the social environment during lunch and recess and going to the what's it called? Makerspace. And so I just can't emphasize enough how transformational that was for the kids who were able to take advantage of that opportunity. It really speaks to certain science minds and math minds just socialize very differently and are looking for a different kind of experience and engagement, particularly when they go from elementary school to middle school. And I just, opportunities like that are really make or break. It's more than just using your mind. It really is, you find your people in those types of opportunities. So to the extent that particularly for 6th and 7th graders, we can continue to provide those types of options, everybody wins. You know what I mean? Like it just is, it really is more, it's more than the sum of its parts. It's been the experience that I've witnessed firsthand with multiple children. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all, but like,
Makerspace is still in existence. I'd have to check if it's available every lunch period because staffing it becomes an issue. But, if anything, it's even, with the construction as of the past few years, it's grown. And I'll check with Dr. O'Hara to see if it's available at every lunch period. I'm not 100% certain.
I think also, and this is probably just more of an issue in the middle school and the communication, but it's sometimes kind of kept a secret. Like you have to know. And so just to the extent that we can really invite the kids for whom that is appealing to take advantage of those opportunities, I just think it enhances all the pieces, right?
Oh,
So
definitely.
just kind of little shout out. I have to always be working on that one.
No.
And then my last, as I currently have a 6th grader, and I was driving carpool, is just a little like anecdote that they love 6th grade science, like more than gym. Like, I mean, it might shift, but they're having the approach of those teachers. I really wanted to call out the engagement, the fun that they're really bringing into that classroom is remarkable. I mean, it was a car full of boys, like belling about science, which I never would have thought would have happened.
Great to hear. The very beginning of my report, I had quoted a Hofstra student who visited.
Yeah.
And when I read that, it's one of those things where, you get the call, could I bring some hot? And I'm like, oh, sure, because I have nothing to do. But it turned out to be such a positive event. And then when I read everything she said about her experience, and she hit everything that we try and do. And it was so rewarding to see somebody not familiar with our district who also had gone to other districts, and they really came here because the teacher of that course actually said that they're not seeing good science in other districts. Can we bring them here? And it was so similar to the group of boys in your car. I always love that type of feedback. But it's nice to know that your intent is actually being realized. And so thank you for that.
It's landing in that group of cars. I think that's really all I have to say. I mean, you gave us so much to work with, and it's such a great department. So thank you for all the work that you do.
Thank you. Dave.
Okay. Echoing my fellow trustees, very good report. The backup is probably what drives a lot of my questions because it was very comprehensive, and obviously a lot of overlap with the presentation, but not fully. So I sort of broke it down for some of the math stuff first. The first thing I wanted to say is, Dr. Mattis, I look back, it's been just about a year that you were here. So you're clearly, a Viking. You understand what makes us us and the way you prepared this report, the detail. I thought it was fantastic. So thank you very much. Mr. Mitchell, not that yours wasn't, but we'll get to you. I wanted to say that the test scores and the reports are not about comparing ourselves to other districts. And yet, it's certainly nice when we are at the top of all of these. I mean,
Absolutely.
it was tremendous. And what we always talk about up here is being at the, trying to be at the top of those without doing the test prep. So in other words, the intrinsic learning and the way we teach our students gives them the tools to succeed so well on these exams. I mean, the numbers were amazing. So my first question is, I think I just do want to ask, is test prep creeping back in some way, do you think, or?
I mean, in terms of like, I could talk more about like regions. We do, after school regions, prep, and the teachers definitely designate time within their pacing calendars to allow for that. But I don't think it's any more so or less than what has been done in the past. I don't think we did anything differently this year. If anything, actually, we had less after school, but more intentional focus on how we were looking at how we were preparing students and really focusing more on the just elements of the exam so that they were familiar with it, and then how to tie that content to it.
It's not the way it was, very, very long time ago with, test prep drill books coming in and all that stuff. Okay. Because the results were outstanding. You mentioned PD as a cause of that. I think that certainly is a correlation. You talked about it in your presentation, but it works. So it's something we've always supported, and I'm very pleased to see that. Very quickly, yes to the expanded math center hours. It's great to see the prevalence of support that's reflected by the student responses. But that's a great resource. Then, the fact that those kids who are using it repeatedly makes sense. But that's 28%. So let's.
No, absolutely, and that we see the need, and we see that we want to expand it, and the teachers have expressed that to me as well.
We think the double period of math in high school is going away for those.
For the IB course, yes,
it is.
Mm-hmm.
That math. We call it a math lab, or we call it a math.
Yeah, for the IB course math lab, because of how tight their schedule was, and with feedback from the teachers and the students, actually, when we spoke to them, they were very in favor of eliminating that lab, which I found interesting. Yeah, just for that course, not for the other lab.
Correct. Yeah, just for the two IB courses, and really, I actually think in the long run it'll increase enrollment, because I think some students find it limiting to have to do that double block, because then it really takes away from something else that they could be participating in.
Makes sense. We've talked about the limitations of their schedule, and these kids, I mean, you see it with these students. They want to do so much. There's so many opportunities. You can't do everything. So many of them are not taking a lunch, and kudos to our teachers for allowing them to bring in a snack and eat in lunch. Kids are fed during the day, but they want to do so much, and it's great, but there's only so much you can do. So I think that's a if you're saying that, from an administrative and teaching perspective, that's a clog that's unnecessary, let's train on it.
I think it goes back to even access to the math center. If kids aren't taking a lunch, they can't go, but now that may open up more opportunity. And then if we can expand availability, then it's a win-win.
That's great. The equity was covered well in the test report sections and pages. It wasn't addressed as directly in the write-ups, or kind of the strengths and areas of focus. You talked about it more in your presentation. I think that at least I saw it. But that's always something that's key. I didn't see, and this is one area, I didn't see gender as an equity breakdown. And I know historically in math and science, there's sort of been questions about enrollment and how different, boys and girls, young men and young women are enrolling in these classes and succeeding or struggling in these classes. So I think that's something I wouldn't mind possibly seeing in the future. And I wouldn't mind, if possible, for both presentations, we see the subgroup breakdown in terms of performance. We don't see subgroup breakdown in terms of enrollment and what types of classes and paths they're taking. That might, not that not that 70 pages isn't enough backup, but 71, 72, that would be something that would
It's a great point.
that I,
Thank you.
that I think could help. The advanced college level scores were really strong. There wasn't subgroup data in there, but I feel like you can't because you know who these kids are. There's 12 kids take a test. How can you say who got what? And so that there's one English language learner in that class, and it's in the report. So, so I guess I'm answering my question of why it's not in there. But I did note that. Curious why you see there's an increase that you talked about in students taking that fourth year of math in high school.
I looked at it, yeah, and if you saw on the chart, it really was a big jump from even last year's cohort to this year's cohort. I can't say I have the answer to that. I mean, it's definitely something that I could look into and get back to you on.
Okay,
but I'm not exactly 100% sure why that might be. But I was really happy to see it.
I mean, as Mr. Minchell talked about with science, their enrollment does the talking to some degree. They hear about it, they know these things, they want these things, they want to do so many things. But I'd be curious to know, other than what is it what it looks like. I had one very specific point of clarification on that just so I don't really understand this. The double accelerated students are taking generally calc. They end up taking calc BC in 11th grade.
11th grade.
And then they go to linear algebra.
And then they go to linear algebra.
Just curious. And the last thing I have specifically for math is 101 responses from the 12th graders, and a quarter of them said the work was too difficult. That was interesting. I don't know.
And I don't know, I'm not sure what that correlation is for them. Yeah.
It was interesting. Those are my questions specific for math. For science, also great report, Mr. Mitchell. Thank you. Very comprehensive. Obviously, you know what makes us, and you exemplify it in the work. I was curious if happy is not the right word, but are you at a good place, satisfied with the kind of the array of the high school offerings, the breadth of the courses and the sequence? You talked about the fact that it's unlike math or even, certainly the languages. It's not linear in science. People pop around a little bit more, particularly in the 11th and 12th graders who are ending up at those accelerated ones. But chemistry is a very, very hard class that happens really early, especially that AP chemistry class, which is perfect for those kids looking for a challenge. Right. But it comes up differently. And then bio is now the only HL that's offering for IB. I was wondering how you feel about that kind of the spread of class offerings.
I think we do, for a school our size, I think we do a really good job of offering, especially considering AP and IB, although, as you just said, bio would be the only HL still available. I mean, the real sticking point for me is we know that colleges want to see students have the full array of science. So they want earth science, chemistry, some sort of bio. Probably the more competitive colleges, we're not talking about the 8th grade living environment, we're talking about an AP bio, and then physics. And it becomes difficult to squeeze all that in, especially for a student that is going to take both years of the HL bio. It means they pretty much would have to double up in physics. So that, that's really been something we've, knocked our head against the wall to try and come up with. And that's also to some degree why in my report I kind of show the offerings based on career path and rigor. And so it comes out that like the rigorous health student is the one that's usually doubling up on in senior year. Because the engineer could just take now the AP Physics C, and it's nice and neat. So that's definitely an area I would still like to continue to look at. But again, not to keep going back to the new graduation requirements, but I am optimistic that there might be we might see opportunities where we didn't see them before to get a little creative, even to bring in combination, like a lot of districts do, like the LEAPS program, where it's like living environment with AP environmental at the same, like kind of at the same time. Or like, so I think that those opportunities for our district of our size are going to be more available to us as the graduation requirements, and the importance of needing to take that regions for an advanced regions diploma now, that's going to be going away. So I think I'm excited about trying to plan all that out with everybody here and see if we can get creative and improve upon that. But in answer to your first question, I am happy with what we do. I think we offer a lot of things at a lot of different levels. There's a lot of on and off ramps. We don't really hold too many restrictions. Obviously, AP Physics C, you need certain things, and AP 1 too. But I think for the most part, it's self-select. It's on and off ramps all over the place. There's a lot of different interests. So I think it's pretty good.
I was more familiar, as a student years ago with the much more traditional. You take an honors if you're going to be on one of these AP paths. You take an honors bio, honors chem, honors physics, and then the one you like best, you take the AP version of. And that was so much more traditional, but much more linear. Everyone's in that same route. I was not in the accelerated sciences, and then my senior year, I wanted to take an honors physics. I felt like it was going to be more impressive for my colleges, and so I was in the class with the honors physics students in 11th grade, which gave me what they needed. And actually, I was already taking calculus. It was a breeze because the physics I already had the math behind me. But I think that's not kind of the way. That's not our model. I
think it's kind of cool too that I'll go into a physics classroom and it's like 60% seniors but 40% juniors, and just that communication and collaboration, because they're the seniors are talking about college and stuff. And I'm sure there are conversations for juniors like, oh, where'd you get in? How what was that? So there's a lot of other good stuff happening from that mix.
I agree. That mix we talk about, whether it's interdisciplinary, whether it's the self-selection that creates a mix, I think is very beneficial to our students. So I agree with that philosophy. The survey responses were really good in terms of challenge and support. And it was interesting at the very higher level, parents and students diverged a little bit, which I thought was interesting. The parents said, oh, they have tons of support. And the kids looked like they maybe wanted and needed a little more. So I don't know if that's a question of they understand it differently or parents are aware of all the things they could be doing and the students aren't availing themselves of it quite to that degree. That's not really a question, but it's more of an observation. Test scores, it was definitely, as you pointed out, some of the more kind of stark areas of concern were, those chemistry and physics were definitely addressed. I think there's still work to be done, kind of across the board. I think in some of those results, but certainly we're in the right direction. Living environment, I wasn't sure if we're going in the right direction.
I mean, the living environment results, and I kind of alluded to this in the report, is, so we're going up again, most districts have, it's like an honors 8th grade class, and then you got 9th graders, taking it. So we're sending up all of our, 8th graders up against the other districts. So I think when you consider that, they're really going up against 8th grade honors kids and then 9th graders who, kind of alluding back to what we were talking about earlier with now they all passed the test, that summer, that year, it's a different type of student. So I think when you take that into account, I think our 8th graders are kicking some serious bio butt.
I don't know. I certainly wouldn't know what to do with the data. I was looking at the data and seeing that. I think your description of the change between children from 8th graders to 9th graders is magical, is not the only word that I think could be used to describe that path, but I appreciate it. And certainly all students develop at their own level. But one of the goals that I can see from both your presentations and from all the presentations we do up here is gearing kids for success at what they can do, to be able to be faced with challenges and then meet those challenges. And so this data to help us understand what we can do in a big picture for those students is something I know you guys will be on. One other thing I just wanted to mention, the science club and the research participation is amazing. It's growing, the quality of it, the depth of it, the breadth of it. I did wonder about the space for that. Dr. Z mentioned it in his report, or I guess it was the end of Caitlin's report, at the beginning of your report, but it was discussed. So it's something I'll bring up a little later tonight, but I just wanted to find out, we have identified that the current space is not meeting the student need.
We did that like 3 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So, but here we
more
are.
than that. Remember when Dr. Giorizzo was superintendent, I think there was a movement to use some of the money to go to.
So one of the undone
Yeah.
bond
Yeah.
funds was to build a path between the J wing and the S wing, and then build at least one offshoot classroom with the potential for additional offshoot classrooms
Yeah,
for future pupils.
we think we found a much more immediate, less dramatic solution to it. It did involve some, moving around of other rooms and stuff, but it's really, I would say, would you agree, it's pretty much a minimal cost?
Yeah, we need some ventilation upgrades. So there's some mechanical engineering drawing and stuff that we need done. So we're almost there. I do want to say in 2019, we did offer the Victorian as like the new home, and there were a couple of reasons why Dr. Mordecai didn't want that. So we had this dream of like that's going to be the center with like its
Right.
own place. But the back and forth wasn't conducive there. She thought there'd be a lot of lost time. She wanted it in the building. So that's why we went back. So I do think we're close to that being done.
Yeah, Mr. Contreras and I met with John Hall. Oh, and we met with Jamie was at that meeting, and it looked like everything was pretty much in agreement, and we're hoping to cut the ribbon in September.
I won't ask any more, but these were my questions I prepared before I came tonight, and then I found out about it in real time tonight. I had one more comment and then one more question. I think you both talked about extra help and the access for that support. This is just a comment. I think it's possible that the availability is plentiful, and the volunteerism and the work and the effort of our faculty to help the students is laudable. In terms of the efficacy of what goes on, it's possible that could be an area that PD may want to be looked at in terms of what goes on in the extra help sessions. Just as another way to kind of build the whole model. And then this is my final question, and I'm not sure if it's for you guys or for Dr. Z and Dr. Smythe, but we made some very big changes to our administrative model, and now we're K through 12. And I guess I just wanted, whatever feedback you kind of think is appropriate to kind of tell us about how that's going.
And I can certainly provide a more thorough response, but I have to say I'm a little biased because, and I think Dr. Smythe and I both believe in the K through 12 model. I think the model that we had that was STEM and humanities for those years at the elementary level, and then the teacher leader model, and then became secondary directors, built a lot. We built a lot during that time that has allowed now the K through 12 model to be very successful. And I think I do think Mr. Mitchell is enjoying the elementary piece. I'd say the same for Mr. Gordon, who was here earlier, and likewise that Dr. Mattis has brought so much, coming from a high-performing district that's also a Tri-States Consortium district, and has jumped right in, and we've seen movement with faculty and students immediately. So I think, and Dr. Mattis could speak to this because it was the model she had in that other district. So there is something powerful there, especially, I'd say, in STEM with Dr. Smythe's support, behind the whole system. So, but I'll get you something more coherent because it's a very important question. It's been 2 years in now. So
No, I know that it was born from, to some degree, need. But I also will say this, and this is just my last comment: the fact that you just led by saying it's something that you and Dr. Smythe believe in as the ideal, pedagogical model. That's a big part of the answer. So you guys are really, you're the spiritual leaders of this district academically, and so to have that be the way that you're setting this, that you believe in, that's a big piece. So,
Dad, I was talking to a superintendent in Westchester, in a very high performing district, and they were talking about like the vertical integration work. So when you look at the highest performing districts that I think are like us, who are kind of indicative of where we want to keep going, they believe in the vertical in curriculum writing, in terms of instructional approach. So like when Dr. Mattis and Mr. Mitchell talk about the philosophy of science learning, that's that kind of approach, and not just the written curriculum, but the mindset, which is a picture. Yeah.
This report is certainly both in its content and in its presentation and the level is indicative of just how high performing we are. So it's good to see. Thank you. Appreciate it. I appreciate everyone's patience. My questions.
Thank you. You're up next. Jessica.
That's actually like a good segue into the question that I had. My question was really, first of all, I think everything is wonderful. I think that the way that this is laid out and everything and all of the metrics and all of the details is very thorough and gives you a really good idea of what's going on in the secondary level math and science programs. My question is more geared towards that vertical alignment, and are there any particular inroads or alignments or processes that we are taking care to do to align the elementary with the secondary?
Can speak to that because that's really in my next steps, and some of what I really want to work on going forward is looking at that, and especially for math, because math is so linear and it builds. It's really important that we have those conversations, and that's why I do think the K-12 model is an important overview and look at our curriculum, and we can really, I think, move the needle further when someone's overseeing that continuum, especially in math. And I think, like I said at the end of the presentation, really now looking at fifth grade becoming departmentalized. I actually had a post-observation just yesterday with one of the fifth grade teachers, and we were just talking about that and what that might look like going forward. And I said, I envision maybe the fifth grade teachers even coming down and meeting with the sixth grade teachers when we have departmentalization meetings, things like that. And I think that can only happen when you have this view of it, when you're looking at it from that K-12, lens. So that's how I see it. And I really do think that really next steps for me, I'm here a year, I really feel like I really dove into the elementary school this year. It really is next steps for me is to look at that vertical alignment.
I'm answering Dave's question a little bit too with just how much I love going into the elementary school. I was in a kindergarten class just this week watching the students chant photosynthesis, which was incredible. And I'm always amazed by the level of science that they're doing. And what you really notice, and it's laid out by the next generation science standards, but everything is integrated in terms of earth and space science, physical science, and life science within the units. The units constantly repeat as you go from grades like K through 2 and then 3 through 5. You see similar topics, but every time you see them at another grade, it's a deeper dive. That continues through 6th and 7th grade, where now you're taking, a really deep dive on all three of those areas. And then in 8th grade, we start like the specialization part. So 8th grade is mostly dedicated towards biology or living environment. And then, within the high school, it's that specialty. But that foundation is so strong. I mean, even if you look at, it was the first time ever that the new 5th grade exam was given last year. But in terms of our performance, compared to other districts, we are so much more prepared. And it's because we've been doing this now for like 8 years of really changing over and creating that integrated pathway where all three of those science disciplines are being taught at different levels at deeper depths. So there really is an excellent vertical alignment with that.
One more question would be and I know one of the goals was to include the career pathways and things like that in the secondary. Is there any thought of, and I realize that in secondary that's more where that's going to happen, but is there any thoughts of just introducing that in the elementary level? Like these are the types of things that these types of sciences lead towards?
We use a platform, Mystery Science. Carol actually had introduced it into the elementary schools. And teachers, what I like about it is that the teachers, and I encourage them, use it as you best see fit. Don't just start it's mostly a smartboard activity. Don't just start at the beginning and 40 minutes later press stop. I want you to just cherry pick the best parts and use it. But a really good component of that often is it will talk about careers that relate to the science they're learning at the time, whether it's a geologist studying volcanoes or rock formations, or a zookeeper looking at different species and things. So it is kind of included with that. But I do think maybe even an old-fashioned career day might be a good idea or something like that. We did a science fair a couple of years ago at the high school where we had different science career, people in the district who were different STEM careers come in and kind of talk about what they did and stuff. So, no, I mean, it's a great idea.
I think they actually have a career week at the middle school. I think it's next month. So yeah, it's great.
You want to ask?
Trustee Dillon's questions sparked a question that I had meant to ask, and I didn't have the opportunity. And it had to do with math homework, and to what extent you're looking at maybe the build of that rigor, particularly preparation for those transitions. Is that part of your?
It wasn't something I particularly looked at for this, but
No.
it's definitely something that I can look into if you feel you're seeing a discrepancy in that.
I would be interested in if you were I wouldn't want to use our own personal experience to dictate district policy, but I could imagine where it would be interesting to consider.
You like just to clarify, like from like 5th to 6th grade or from like 8th to 9th, like is it during those transitional times? Like how are we building that capacity to take on that next level?
I think homework is always something that is interesting to just as a topic and to keep fresh, because there's been kind of different points of view, and making sure that, as a district, we're consistent in the execution, because there's also a lot of variability with teachers. And so I guess as a department head, I would be interested in your take and making sure that it's purposeful and, appropriate and in line with the transition through the rigor of those processes. And I wouldn't want to suggest an outcome, but I think it's an okay
inventory
question.
Yeah, an inventory of how it's being done to see, that consistency among the teachers teaching the same courses, and more of that vertical piece as well.
And is fourth and fifth graders really being adequately prepared for that shift in workload in sixth grade?
I think again that goes back to really I want to work on that 5th to 6th transition and look at ways in which we can build that. I've talked to directors in other districts who do accelerate majority of their students for algebra in 8th grade, and a lot of them do look at the through line of algebra skills all the way down to elementary school. So it's something that I'm really interested in looking at so that we can make sure that our students feel ready.
Thank you. You probably don't know because you weren't here, but about 7 years ago, there was a homework committee. There was a homework policy that was created that the board adopted. So
there's a lot of varying research on homework, and I think it can sometimes be different opinions on it. But I do think there should be consistency among the department and among the the course specific.
So I guess thank you so much for the report and the backup. My comments, I have a few of them. I was very interested in the backup survey question, which talked about the parents being able to assist their children with the homework, where 40% said they were confident they can do it. 40% said they were not confident. They were uncomfortable being able to do it. And sort of connecting that to this idea of maybe the students not using the resources as much as they can. Like, I wonder if there's a way to pilot this, and you would need some side letter with the union, having a virtual extra help at night after sports, whether that was like specific to science, where you had chemistry night, biology night, whether it was specific to different math. So when the kids go home after their extracurriculars are over and they start to sit down with their homework, is there a night that's available online where they can do sort of like a homework check-in with their teacher or with a teacher from that content area? So that was an idea I had. You both spoke so much about the integration between science and math, and I do think we could do a better job with the IEPs. I don't think we're creating IEP modifications where we're having, for instance, the math teachers teaching the formulas that that are being taught in the science classes. So, chemistry, physics, earth science, there's so much math embedded into those classes. And if you are an IEP student, right, you might be struggling with math and therefore struggling with the science. Are we creating IEPs that are really able to sort of maybe like target that?
Bridge that, you're saying, like, to make that connection between where those skills transfer from one class to the other. It's a really great point.
Thank you. Also, the double acceleration, it was so nice to see that you're so positive about the double acceleration. It was just a few years ago that the board was sort of presented with the idea to remove that, and I'm so glad that we didn't, and so many students are taking advantage of it. And it's so great they're able to get more classes into their high school schedule. Also, and we touched on it a little bit, the living environment, the passing rate with the IEP students being like a pretty big difference. 98% passing rate in the non-disabled, and that's not my language, that's just the language you're using, and 74% passing rate with the disabled students. So what are we doing specifically to either maximize those co-teaching classes, extra help? I'm just curious.
Specifically, we have a much smaller grouping of ICT for students that met a certain criteria in terms of their reading level and recommendation from their seventh grade teacher. So there is a section of co-taught that that is really more of a modified curriculum, still with the intent of taking the regents at the end of the year. I'm actually meeting with both of those teachers next week with Mr. Kistinger just to check up after midterms. But so that is something new that we're piloting, and we're hoping to continue that going forward.
Have any early?
I mean, early, just like kind of qualitatively, the kids are well. The most noticeable things is the stress level is down a lot. Like we have happy children in the classroom, which is important. I mean, the teachers feel that it's going well. They're advancing the curriculum. They're not seeing any problems with finishing up, and the curriculum. I will know more on Tuesday after we need to kind of go over midterms. But it's nice in the sense that we're not needing to modify in like a gen ed situation where these kids are getting like, why is Johnny getting a different, so it's all the students are kind of moving at the same speed, and they seem to be doing really well so far. So
I think that's great. And I think that class in particular, if you have a bad experience in your first Regents class, it does feel like you're being set up for failure for all these next years. So if they're set up for success there, I mean, that really can help a child's competency or a feeling of mastery.
I was just going to say, I also want to mention, Mr. Mitchell, we talked, you, Dr. Smythe, and I spoke a lot about the issue with LE last year, and there's a lot of work on your end in, looking at it, giving feedback, and really trying to tackle the problem. So thank you.
Thanks. I appreciate that. And again, not to beat a dead horse with the graduation requirements, but again, that could also be an opportunity as things change. We may be able to, still offer that same level of rigor, but, we might be able to present it in a different way and not worry so much about, that Regents exam or whatever. So hopefully there'll be a lot of good changes that can come out of it.
Excellent. Thank you both so much, and Carol, for all this work. We look forward to next year's presentation. All right. We will now be moving on to our next discussion, which is the unexpended bond funds. I think we're going to stay here, but we have some handouts. Thank you. Oh.
Thank you. You too. But you can see the the Smythe Zublionis contrast here. I'm going minimalist on mine.
I always feel bad
but
for the printer with these colored things.
I tried, you know.
They're beautiful.
This was a very colorblind friendly day here at the
Yeah.
district, I got to say. The charts, the yellows and blue, I love it. Not all green, orange, red. It's terrible.
A few weeks ago at Construction Steering Committee, we had talked about the completion of the work with our current bond, the 2019 bond, $39.9 million coming to a close, and how there were some unused funds within that bond. And the board requested that we speak about that tonight. So we're going to do a quick run through of the situation, why that happens, and what some of our options are, and then engage in that discussion. So I'm looking at Mr. Pappas. We're gonna work through, and so as we look at the first page, really, why does this happen? We have a $39.9 million bond. We have about $2 million in unused funds from that.
At this point, it's about $1.5 million. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. And so there are a few reasons why that happens. When the bond is progressing, we might be estimating cost increases, so we'll take projects off. One project we've talked about is some of the renovations at central office. We did indeed take that off. We took the main office at the high school off the active list because we had increased costs in the other projects. So you're constantly estimating the movement of prices, and it's better to be on the end we're on, and we kind of overestimated some of those costs, so now we're under. We have an unused amount of funds.
There's a lot of things that they build in, contingencies, things like asbestos removal that they don't know if they open up a wall, they'll be so. One thing you can't do is overspend a bond on a project. So as they go through the process, they may remove a project that's a separate project, and then put that towards another project that may need more work that was unanticipated, as well as those contingencies that we don't need that end up being part of the leftover money.
So when you think about a bond, you have a few options, very basic. You can complete all projects, use the majority of the funds. You can have leftover funds and proceed with projects that were on that original list. Unfortunately, you're not allowed to do new projects or change the list like you can with the capital reserves. The community vote, you can't. That's not an option. The other option is to have those leftover funds and pay back part of the bonded debt. So those are the different options we have. And typical North Shore fashion, we're going for the North Shore Gray, a mix of both. We have two major options: complete projects on the original list. Bond funds can be used only for the purposes for which they were originally obtained and voted on by the community. Option 2 is to use for bonded debt. And so in addition to utilizing the remaining portion of bond funds for projects that were on that original list, you can use those unused funds to kind of get a jump start, Jamie, on paying back the bonded debt.
Correct. And any leftover money that isn't used for a project ultimately has to go to either pay down the debt. In our case, we have a band, which is a bond anticipation note. It's short-term financing. At the end of the year, we're going to turn that into long-term financing. So you would apply any leftover monies to the principal of that, getting a smaller bond than the band that's currently outstanding, or place the money in a reserve for bonded debt and use it over a period of time, over a number of years, to reduce your costs on that debt.
So we're opting for a mix of the two, the North Shore Gray. We are recommending that the board consider using a portion of those unused funds for central office repairs that were on the original list voted on by the community. Again, though, and I think this is why I think it's a great idea to talk about this, that was in That was December 10th, 2019, when that vote happened. So a long time ago. And this project would involve repairing portions of the building that are 30 years old that would be hard to do both financially and structurally, if we push them. So I think that is, it's not that it's central office, and these are structural projects, waterproofing the foundation wall. Like they kind of, these, when you look at this list, it goes to the integrity of the building. It's not really very cosmetic. Replacing the roof, replacing windows, replacing a fire escape, replacing the wood siding, and there's an abatement allowance within that siding as well. Does that cover it? The drainage system as well. That would be a part of the roof replacement.
As well as the fire escape that's down the back of the building, which is, I believe, original to the building, or at least 40 years old, and in need of repair, replacement. When I was talking to Mr. Hall about the work that had been done to the, when they last had done work, he said it was last painted in 2005, which is about 20 years ago, and the roof was replaced when they did the addition back in 1995. So there's quite a number of years before anything major has been done to the building. Although it's kept up very well and looks nice as you walk around, you can see the siding that's in need of replacement or repair, as well as from water infiltration, the basement, it's a mold and other things. So that's all things that they're trying to address with this.
The wood siding, it'll give it a nice, fresh look.
Yes, it will look nice when it's done, but it's more, it does have some cosmetic benefits, yes, but it's more about the current state of the building, which is why we wanted it hopefully move forward.
I think of it, it's like all about the water infiltration. It's the roof, the water leakage, and then the siding, it's all about and then the foundation, protecting it from water damage. And then the other part too would be to take, so that would be 500,000 estimated. 1 million would be to pay towards the bonded debt.
Central office stores a lot of documents, records, history.
That's correct, in the basement portion, but also throughout all the offices. There are all the personnel paper records, textbooks, historical records, board ledgers, things like that as well.
So water, we don't want water damage.
Yeah, and really for things like that, but also for the integrity of the building.
Right.
I think one thing we think about is always, it's an asset of the districts, it's of the community, and like we've talked about with other things, it could become something that's of value if we needed it at some point in time, and we also want to maintain it for that purpose.
Again, while there were other projects that were originally anticipated when they were talking about the bond, both the work to be done at the administration building as well as the press box had gone to the point where they bid the work. They actually got permits for some of the work. The press box we're addressing now with some grant money and capital money. So that is being taken care of. And then the other one that we had permits and bids, although we will go out for fresh bids since it's been a number of years since we got them, it would be the administration building.
Questions, comments?
Thank you. So I just want to be clear, the only thing that can be done with that money, well, the three things you laid out, you can't go back to general fund. You can't undo it. It has to go toward bond financing. Okay. And it would create $85,000 of quote unquote more debt falling off, so to speak?
It would roughly, based on $1 million, we're still fine tuning the final payments and other things, so it could change slightly, but based on that $1 million, that's roughly $85,000 a year for the life of the bond.
What's that life? Is it 20, 30?
It's I think it's 17 years.
17
Yes.
years. Okay. Good, because we talked about the other night at a Booster Club meeting the amount of debt that might be falling off. So that number was, sorry, I gotta get a seat.
Yeah, look at this guy.
We had roughly $800,000 that was falling off. However, the cost of the new bond is built into that. So I think it's about 400, maybe $500,000 that potentially could go towards a new bond, towards capital projects.
Use the $1 million after the central office work to go back to the bond, it would create an extra, very roughly 75 to 100.
Right.
Okay. On top of the 4 to 5 that's there right now. Okay. And that space in the budget is currently allocated for debt service, but it could that budgetarily be reconfigured or reimagined?
You try to keep the debt service and the cost of capital projects from year to year relatively flat. So what we would do in the initial year, because we wouldn't get the new bond for any new work probably until next year, if we were able to do that, we would use that money to do projects in the current budget, in the current year, items that we have, so that we could address some of the things we've been talking about more recently in our capital projects meetings. But we would do that, and then when we were ready to move to a bond or another form of financing, we would repurpose that 500 or 600 to that.
You have a pie, that's a wedge, and you could use that wedge in different ways, but you want the wedge to remain because when you pick up the debt again, it'll keep your pie the same size.
Right.
Even though it's
Yes.
a slightly larger pie every year. And does that affect our cap, things like that? Debt service, it's calculated differently?
Service and capital projects both fall into the cap, so it would keep the cap somewhat unchanged.
Okay, so capital, okay, you couldn't use it for example, hiring 5 new teachers, for example. That's a different way to do it. It has to be a capital project either through a straight expenditure or through a bond work, but it's still part of that line.
Correct. Capital projects, the debt on capital projects, purchases of buses are all big capital items that fall into your calculation of your tax cap.
All right, I have a couple more questions. I'm fascinated by this. I think this is really interesting. So one of the projects that we talked about a little bit tonight is the science research. With the way the bond is defined, I'm just curious, does it have to be done as a corridor and then a science research facility that costs about $2 million, or can you say part of the bond was a community approved a new science research space and have some flexibility? And how flexible? Again, it's a somewhat mysterious whether the science research facility is going to be, but I'm excited about it. But could you, for example, rather than build a corridor, could you just make a classroom that's attached to one of the sides to either S or J, and then just have the kids walk out, walk back in? Just I'm not an architect, but just asking. How flexible?
Yeah, and I think so. 2 questions. Kind of like with a capital reserve, there's a lot of flexibility. It's kind of naming the project, and the design is irrespective. We might need to look into that to make sure. But
I have to look into it because it really depends on how the bond was wording, at what point did those projects go up to. So I can't easily say that yes, we could do a smaller portion of one of those other projects, but we'll.
And then the other part of that of Trustee Ledmar's question is the cost, and like how much would that cost, and do we have the unexpended funds? Would that be enough to cover that? And do we remember? We have to look at the cost of what that was. And did we?
I know the hallway with the attached was several $1 million. It was a large amount.
That might be.
I had it listed here. Like I got it from the corridor was $849. Again, this is $2019, which is like you could buy a dozen eggs for what it costs for one now. But that was the number, $849, and then the research room itself was $1.1. So that corridor and the room would be $2 million. But I just don't know. I think there's sort of 2 separate things. Obviously, the needs for the central office is pressing. It is a district asset. If that's your recommendation, which clearly it is, then I think that's something I would support. We've got the extra $1 million potentially, and also I guess before you answer that question, so we're let's say we allocate 500 to the central office. If that comes in at 380, you have some number left over that goes back. It keeps going back in there until at some point you decide to dissolve the bond.
Until you use it to pay off the existing debt. The fear would be is because we're still wrapping up some other projects, is that we would go forward with a $800 or $1 million project and not have enough to finish that project once we go out and get all of the estimates and bid the jobs.
We have 1.5 now, or we're not sure.
We have one. I think it's 1.4 and change right now. But there is potential for unforeseen things that we haven't. I don't think that they're going to be in the hundreds of thousands, but I would be fearful that there's a change order or something. I mean, we're really finishing things up.
I mean, central office is not. It was last done 20 years ago. The building's got to be 100 years old, right? I mean,
yeah, I believe so.
Oh, there's certainly. Sorry, Betty. You know the answer to that question. It's more than that.
Yeah.
And so it looks great for its age, but the idea of hidden costs is certainly a greater risk when you're talking about a building that's of that age. So I guess my question takeaway is, for whatever was left over, what's our flexibility on potentially allocating it towards science research? I like the idea of a science research facility potentially being part of a new capital project, because one of the things that I think is a good idea for the community is to give lots of people lots of reasons to support a capital project. And so we all know that North Shore students, there are science research students playing sports, obviously. So there's overlap, but they are somewhat different projects, and there is an appeal to doing it with a new instrument. But there's also an appeal to saying it's already done. We may have some money, and we don't have to like the corridor. Let me say this from my perspective. I think one of the lessons that I have learned by being on this board and seeing these projects is that to some degree it's about bang for your buck with these dollars. And one of the reasons I think that the very expensive high school locker room renovation was something that hasn't been done or has been kind of put as a side project is because it's very expensive, and then you're going to do it. And this isn't 1978. Kids don't shower in the school anymore, and kids don't use those lockers. And it's all this money for something we're not really going to necessarily use that much. And so the idea of 50 students not having a sink in a science research facility seems like something that is going to be bang for our buck doing it, as will like not letting central office like be eaten alive by moisture and whatever else is in there. So I get both of those things. But the idea of science research not having to be part of a large corridor and the other expense, the corridor seems like not a lot of bang, and the research facility seems like a lot. So I think it's something that I'd like to know the flexibility of what we can do and can't do, because we have the potential of the money, we have the mechanism there. So that's really, those are my questions. I had a lot more notes, but it's not early. I will let it go, other than to say I do appreciate this. I think it's important for the community to see the transparency of what we're doing, see what we do with our funds, see how we make these decisions, and what tools are available for us. I didn't know the way that those bonds, the idea of using the bond to help pay off the debt is appealing. But then again, the idea of using it, saving $85,000 a year, or potentially using it right now for something that our students can be using with SED, let's say 18 months, is appealing as well. So those are my questions.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I wanted to just echo some things that Trustee Ludmore said, which is obviously, it's the least fun money to spend is the kind of maintenance and the deferred maintenance, actually, of the unsexy part of roofs, and even in our own homes. Like, nobody loves to spend money on that, but it's just part of doing business. And so I fully support it. I also fully support waiting and seeing how much money we actually have when it's all done, because Lord knows what's going to happen when they open up those walls and what it is. I think it bears repeating, if anybody's paying attention, that these were already approved funds by the taxpayer. Were we to be talking about capital projects in other mechanisms or some of the future ideas, we'll have to restart this whole process of the community votes for us to save money for these projects, and then they have to vote again for us to do the projects in a capital reserve scenario. That is not what this is. This is a bond that we took out, that the community voted for, that approved the Science Research Lab, and it approved these renovations. So we're just doing our due diligence now, since they were deferred projects, in a transparent way, of making sure that the gut check of, is this the right thing at the right time in the right way. So I appreciate, central office going to the extra work. We could have put it up and voted on it and moved on with our lives, but we made the conscious choice as a board to engage in this conversation in a public way. And so, pats on the back for you all for going the extra work to make sure that is crystal clear for anybody who's hopefully paying attention. And that is all I really wanted to say.
Thank you, everybody. Yes.
One thing I was going to joke with Trustee Ludmar that you said it's fascinating. It's because you're fluent in it. You the way you're talking with Mr. Papps about it, because you were a part of the creation of that bond. We were talking about that today. So this is pre-COVID. This discussion, this original vote was pre-COVID. But I did want to reveal the mystery space that we were talking about. I'm sorry that I haven't. It's actually the teachers' faculty lounge at the high school, reworking that room and moving the faculty lounge to another space closer to the cafeteria in that space, which we think makes more sense for where they are. It's right now the teachers' faculty lounge is removed from the cafeteria, so that's the space that we're looking at. So
You're
we'll
gonna
get more specifics.
You're not making the cafeteria smaller for the students.
No. There's a space that we use for a different purpose. That we're gonna so we're repurposing a couple of rooms.
Two kind of glassed off areas.
Yes, yeah.
I think the way that, again, this is with the help of our architects, but the way that we managed to find and create not just a new dance space, which is very similar in my thought to science research. It's a group of students who need a dedicated space that works for a very specific purpose. But also that in doing that, you transform the art room, made the art room better too. It was a win. It was a big win-win. And so, I want the science research kids to continue having this experience. Forget about the awards and all the rest of that stuff. I want them to be able to do what they need to do. But a creative way to do it, like we did with the dance studio, I'd love it if we could. So you'll let us know.
We love win-wins at North Shore. I will now open up the floor for public comments. Seeing that no one's interested, I will close the floor for public comments, and I will move to action 11, personnel A through H, and action 12, A through B, which is an acceptance of donations. Is there a motion? Thank you. Questions, comments?
Donations are amazing. Living Landing, just boom, down the list.
Thank you. All right, all in favor? Excellent. Everybody, because there's only 4 trustees here, everything has to be unanimous to pass. Action 13, A through B, which is the approval of contracts. Action 14, the approval of health services contracts. And action 15, A through B, the approval of tolling agreements. Is there a motion? Second. Thank you. Questions, comments? All in favor? Unanimous. Action 16, the approval of special education consultant agreements, with action 17, A and B, the approval of special education tuition agreements. Is there a motion? Thank you. Questions, comments? All in favor? Excellent. We now, before we leave, we have board committee reports. Would anybody like to report on their committee?
I have construction steering I can report. We met on January 21st. Very good meeting. We got an EPC update, which basically is that we are, I have a lot of notes here. I don't want to go through all of them, but we are going to start the monitoring and measuring, which is going to begin the payback period, which is exciting. We won an ASHRAE award, which is exciting for our work. Not a lot of municipal projects like this get that, which is exciting. We got $750,000 in a tax rebate, which has been talked about, and it's already part of this, but that's a fantastic thing as well. And there was a lot of talk about a potential new EPC, more solar, which was exciting to think about. But again, exciting for me. And then I go on with my day, and the administration has to figure out what they're going to recommend to us. So I look forward to hearing that. General talk about the construction projects. We talked about the capital reserve a little bit. And different plans, but Dr. Z is certainly barnstorming the community to get good information. That was a great session the other night. The electric buses, we're waiting on the extension of the federal grant, but I don't know who wrote this, but I wrote it in quotes. It's a fluid world in terms of the way this is changing. So we'll just see where that flows. The press box is moving along. The wrestling room leak was repaired. The septics is a topic of conversation. And then we talked about central office, which we just discussed. So that's my report.
Thank you.
One thing I would add to Dave's excellent report was something that stuck out for me from the EPC, which I wanted to memorialize for the rest of the board, which is one of the things that he thought was a sort of stand out for our ability to be as successful as we have been.
Who's the he?
Sorry, the presenter of.
Okay.
Ed from.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
he was
He also
here.
presented to us a couple meetings ago. He felt that because we took a second step of having a second party evaluator of our plans and our contracts, that it was a standout for him in terms of other projects that he's worked in being kind of gold standard and best of breed. So the only reason I say it is it was an added expense, that could theoretically be something, that we would not take the time to do were we to consider a second time. But I wanted to make sure we captured that maybe we should continue that model.
Okay, other committees, thank you.
The Legislative Action Committee is meeting. They are going to participate along with Dr. Z. Members of the committee will go for the lobby day up in Albany at the end of this month. That's pretty much it.
Wellness met. We followed up from some previous meetings. The program Girl on the Run is currently recruiting coaches to start up some teams. The snacks at the high school are now staying open until 3:30 and is very popular. And Dan gave us updates on the JCK Foundation. We approved the contract tonight. LICAT is offering compassion fatigue for our mental health staff. Teen mental health first aid training is in the works. We're trying to sort that out. Lisa also sent, is anyone going to do athletic advisory? Because she sent me that too. Oh, you want to do? I have her notes. I'll read Lisa's notes. She's not here.
I'm sure they're better than mine.
Okay. They met on 1/27. They received updates about the Captain's Council. Captains talked about struggles to go to extra help while playing sports, and they requested replacement of workout equipment, capital projects. They talked about costs for the new track, lights, fields, fencing. They discussed communication apps, looking at Remind or Team Snap Sports U to communicate, and they're looking at their process for returning to play after injury.
Only other thing we had was how St. Francis offers free cardiac screenings for students, and we want to advertise that more.
That's great. Any other?
Revenue generation is meeting this coming Monday. I don't know if we did board reports since the last one. I think we didn't. But it's the committee. I can see it crystallizing in terms of Chris cast a very wide net at the beginning, and now and organized the things that we caught, and now we're going to try to continue refining them. So I'm looking forward to see where we go with that.
Okay. I think we got them all. Any unfinished business?
Just was curious. I was not able to attend the the Zoom that you did on Monday for the capital projects, and you brought up lights. It's been many people are approaching me as a trustee about interest in lights, and I'm interested in the early feedback that you're getting from the community. Obviously, we're not ready to do any kind of finite thing, but I think it's worth kind of, if there's been meaningful conversations, kind of being a little transparent about where the community seems to stand at this time.
Sure, and I will, after the meeting on the 12th, on next Wednesday, I'll synthesize that all for the board. The themes we're seeing, and so we had a document just in terms of the process of this meeting. I did an overview, which is very similar to the overview that the board received a couple of months ago about funding structures. Then we broke out into small groups and Zoom rooms and looked at outside projects, indoor projects, and then like deeper infrastructure indoor projects, and people gave feedback. So some of the trends we're seeing is large space air conditioning, lights, fields, fencing, some of the things you might expect from the survey results. But then also things like traffic. The traffic was a theme that came up for, we talked about possible cut-throughs or extra lanes and what we can do there. That was a big theme. And I'll have to look at my other notes, but I'll, after the Wednesday meeting, we'll put that into a coherent form. But those are some of the things that come top of mind.
Thank you. Any other unfinished business? New business?
Just two very quick things. This is a question actually for Betty. Hi, Betty. You are going to be giving us the budget books the end of next week. Is the paper the only way to see, or is it going to be electronically available for us also? How do we do that?
We do make a scan of it as well, so we can send it electronically. If that, I think ultimately after the first meeting, it even gets posted on the website for others to see.
Okay, but if people want to do research over the break electronically about
carry.
the book, I want to carry it.
Okay.
Is that
I can attach it to the agenda if you want in the
Even that many-
in
even
the
that-
in the executive content.
on board docs?
Yeah,
If-
I think I did that last year.
If we could upload it up to board docs,
I think I can
great.
do that, right,
Okay.
Jamie? Because Lois
Lois
usually
is preparing it, yes.
would be like I don't know when she gets it ready for the website, but before that, I could probably put it just for the board, right?
Yes.
Yeah, as if they were getting their books.
that would be great. Not that I don't love the book or the broken fingers you get from the heavy snap of
No,
the
the
loose
book
leaf.
is really really thick. Yeah.
Second question I have budget season on the brain, and I asked this in advance, but I want to kind of condense it to a very base form without looking at specific numbers. So we got our preliminary aid runs. Thank you for sending them to us. And it looks like we got a nice increase in that amount. But one of those increase areas was in UPK, which of course only can be used for UPK. So without, again, looking at specific numbers, because those runs change, this is the initial budget and who knows where the state's going to go with it. But in general, are there other funds like UPK where it's restricted only for essentially a set program that, I don't know where UPK would go now if we didn't get the money anymore, but let's say theoretically wouldn't be something we'd be doing if we didn't have this money. Or is it all for offsets of either general fund or offsets of specific lines that we can use directly?
So, with the exception of UPK, most of the aid comes in as through the general fund and can be used for other things. A lot of the aid is derived from prior years' spending, and that's how it comes. Other aid, like foundation aid, is just a part.
Aid is essentially you're unrestricted.
Right, and then the big piece is the UPK, which is for future expenditures, and you only get it if you get it as you spend it.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other new business? All right, hearing none, I will now adjourn the meeting. Thank you for everybody staying to almost 11. Get home safely.